Hi,
Hello.
how's it going?
Okay.
Oh
I
my
guess.
gosh. It's weird to be on here. So we had a whole ass podcast last week saying okay, so just in case this might be our last one on TikTok. And oh my gosh, that 12 hours, 14 hours, whatever it was that it was gone was so crazy because we spent the whole day, like most Americans on TikTok spent the whole day that we knew before the ban. We were already in mourning, and then at some point, someone had shared news that oh, TikTok isn't going offline at midnight; it's going offline at 8:30 Eastern. I think for me, it ended up being closer to 8 p.m. my time, Pacific time.
Mhm.
But all of us were suddenly like, oh shit, like what?
Yeah.
We're not expecting it to be gone this fast.
It was just a really weird feeling because, I did something earlier in the day and then I was just at home. And the whole time I was just every time I would start scrolling, I would just get really upset. But then I felt like I couldn't stop because I didn't know if I would ever be able to do it again. And that's
Exactly.
most people were feeling of I keep just looking at this because I don't know if this is ever going to come back. And I guess the thing with all of this stuff, because this was incredibly confusing. They didn't they didn't even say the Supreme Court didn't even put out their decision until Friday. They could have done it on Wednesday, and then a lot of this stuff could have been figured out where it never would have had to go away the way that it would, the way that it did. Um, but they just don't care. To
Yeah.
be honest. But I wanted to at least try to explain what the hell happened because there's so many things and people are still so confused about because it was a very purposefully disorienting experience. Like every 10 minutes there was something new that someone was saying. And so basically what happened was the reason why the app was gone the way that it was because it's banned. Like it's still banned. Like I feel like people maybe don't understand that yet. It's still banned. It's actively illegal. Like Biden and now Trump are breaking their own laws by letting us use this app. They
Yeah.
it is not in the app store. None of them are going to be in the app store for at least I don't know when they would be in the app store. Like I generally don't know how much longer this app is even going to work because it can't be in the app store until they make some sort of deal where they say that it's okay for it to be in there and it's not banned. And
Mhm.
so either way, it's still banned by our government. And so the reason why they took it down was because Biden's administration wouldn't tell them that if they were going to fine them because if you put an app up that's been banned by the government, you get fined $5,000 for every person that uses it, which would have been over $1 billion that TikTok and the Apple Store and the Google Play Store all would have been penalized with. And because he didn't just say, no, we're not going to do that, they had, no one would ever take a risk like that. That's crazy. And so they had to take the app down. And then Trump the next day said that he wouldn't penalize anybody while they're negotiating. And so they brought it back. And so yeah, you can get mad that it's technically Trump saving the app, but it's because Biden and the Democrats are so fucking inept that they couldn't pull their head out of their ass long enough to just do it. That's all they had to do is just say no, we're not going to charge you a crazy amount of money if you leave the app up in the store or if you just leave the app up. It's not in the app store anymore anyway. Um, but now that it's gone, they can't just put it back. And so now it's we're using it, but everything is weird. And a lot of people I saw are coming up with wild conspiracy theories about oh, the censorship is now a lot worse. A lot of the stuff they're bringing up are things that the app did before any of this ever happened. And so, but it is the most of them are just the fact that they took an app on offline that 170 million people were using.
Mhm.
Things aren't going to come back and just work right after that. that's a huge thing that you just like took down like that. That's never supposed to be like taken down like that. Like it's like imagine if you took down like the entire electrical grid of our entire country. You can't just like turn it back on and just have it like start working the way that it's supposed to. It
Yeah.
takes like a while, and so that's where most of those things have come from. And I realize people are just kind of working through it and all that. Um, Trump is still president, so it is generally a good idea to be aware of if you think that there's propaganda and things like that. But I guess the best thing to keep in mind is that the only option that the CEO had was to work with Trump because the Biden administration was the one that decided to go with what Trump wanted originally and try to ban the app. And so the only real option they had for this app to still be in the United States is to try to become friendly with the other side and
Mhm.
try to, and like, God bless that man for trying to negotiate with Donald Trump.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know if you've ever looked into any negotiations that man has ever done, but it's basically just him harassing and threatening them until they give up. So, Godspeed with like ByteDance trying to actually do that and have it be anything even resembling like a deal.
Yeah.
Like, who knows what's gonna happen? And so, the best advice I have is to what everybody was doing, including us, of like trying to find a different place to build community and things. That is still, I think, the best option because no matter what happens, it probably isn't going to be around for that much longer, and it's not very stable, is it? Because Trump is the one in charge of it.
Yeah, well, and this is part of why I didn't join Red Note was because, like, for me, I get it's fun for right now, but if they're saying that their whole thing is they don't want the Chinese to have our data, then like eventually they're going to take that down too. That was my thinking. Like, it's not a long-term solution. It's a funny haha moment right now that I get everybody's having and enjoying, and I'm loving vicariously living through it.
Mm-hmm.
But like that didn't feel effective. Lemon 8, as soon as people were like, yeah, this is also owned by ByteDance, it was like, okay, that doesn't help us. And no one was being serious because everybody's mad at Mark Zuckerberg right now. I mean, like, I guess the most serious answer was YouTube, but that doesn't make sense for everybody because a lot of us thrive on shorter form content.
The
So, yeah.
the one thing I will bring up about YouTube that I'm not sure that a lot of people know about it yet because it isn't something that is like actually happened, but it's supposed to happen on YouTube very soon. I was at the end of the year, I was watching some of those videos of how like YouTube is changing things in the next year, and one of the things they're going to change, which I am going to imagine they're going to try to make this change faster now, is they're adding a lot of things where they're making YouTube more like interactive. Where if you were like a subscriber of us, like if somebody's a subscriber of us and they watch a video of ours and they really like it, they can share it. Like they can like share it and post it and in like their little feed and talk about it and like people can like reply to like the things that they're posting and like basically like your subscribers can like talk to each other on like your page somehow like going back and forth and things like that outside of what you post like they can do that stuff on their own. And so it's the idea of like if you really like somebody you can like share their stuff so other people can see it. And so even if you're not like a well-known person, if your followers like you a lot they'll share your stuff regardless of if you have like a big name or profile or whatever. And it just becomes a more interactive thing where like the subscribers of people could talk to each other outside of like us talking to them. And so if that happened, that would make it a little more interactive and stuff where that could make people kind of make their own communities in the way that TikTok has done. It's still not going to be the same as TikTok ever is. Like no other app is ever going to be like that. It's just a matter of finding something that is similar enough. Like I think the when it comes to like video or whatever stuff, the other option I think that is probably a better option is like Substack too,
Mhm.
because I didn't know this until like 2 days ago, but they also you can also post like short form videos on there. I thought it was just like words. I thought it was just like writing and things like that because most of the people I've ever seen on there are writers in some way. Um, but I guess you can post videos on there too, and that isn't owned by any of like the big like corporate conglomerate people that we all hate.
Yeah.
And so at least for now, it's not. And so that at least is a place where people are just like talking a lot about whatever they care about, and that's fun. Um, and so those are kind of the best options at this point because yeah, Instagram is terrible. Like the apps like Instagram and Threads like just don't work the way that you would want them to. Like Threads, why can I not see somebody's thread on Threads? Like I have to like try really hard to find their like second post, and I'm like, isn't this the name of your entire stupid website?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
and, and especially at this point with how insufferable Mark Zuckerberg is, that he spent $9 million lobbying people in Congress to get them to ban this app because he's not smart enough to think of something like this on his own. Um, yeah, we're not going to want to use your website too much. And I've also heard by like seeing people talking about this over the weekend, um, that the monetization on Instagram is like really bad. I didn't even realize how bad it was, but people were comparing with like TikTok, saying that if you get like a video that gets like a bunch of gets like 1,000 views or whatever on if you have a video get like a bunch of views on TikTok, you can make like $1,000 maybe, and the same videos that they posted on Instagram that got the same amount of views there made like $100. And I was like, wow, Jesus, no wonder why people also aren't really willing to try it very much because that's you're basically making it impossible for anyone to make a living off of that stuff. And if they can't do that, then they're not going to spend their time really trying to figure out your website, which already doesn't make any sense. Like, why did you take away being able to like look at things chronologically? Why do you hate time? And
Exactly.
it works. Like, why? People have been asked, like, I will say, I was thinking about this when the app was banned, that one thing that TikTok does that the other apps don't really is that they, like, respond a lot faster to when people all want something. Like, I was remembering how the first however many months that we got on the app that they didn't have captions on videos, and that we used to all use these other little apps and stuff to add captions to all of our videos. And then after a couple months of that, they just added captions to everything, and now you can get captions in like 14 different fonts and different colors and different languages, and it's a totally normal thing. And like Instagram added captions to their stuff after TikTok added it. And so it's like TikTok added captions, and they when people ask them to switch things around, they will actually change it. People have been asking Instagram to make things chronologically again for like 5 years, and they still have not done that. So
Yeah,
that's
I need a
honestly,
following tab now. Like,
yeah.
I don't want to just discover. I swear, a lot of my what do you even call it? Is it a feed? But a lot of my feed on Instagram is mostly discovering new stuff. It's not necessarily people I follow, especially when it comes to reels. It's like I want to see the people that I followed.
Yeah. And then also like sometimes I'll like see a astrology post and I'll forget to like it or something, and I'll want to go back and look at it, and then I'll like open the app again, and then it'll just be like gone into like the ether of the internet somewhere. And I'm just like, God, like the way that that app works, where it's even more random than TikTok is. You can never find anything like ever again unless you remember to like it or comment on it. But that's most of the time you don't remember to do that kind of stuff. You're just scrolling and enjoying your life. But I guess either way, the stuff with TikTok, the thing I wanted to make sure to make a point of is I saw some people saying like that they were embarrassed for getting so upset about it being gone. No, that is what abusive people do. Is they put you into a frenzy like that instead of just and then making you feel stupid afterwards, when they solve things seemingly so easily.
Hmm.
But the thing about that is that they could have done that the entire fucking time. That's what I was saying
Yeah.
when we first started, was Biden could have just skipped all of this and just told them that he wasn't going to, no one was going to fine them $1 billion if they didn't take the app out of the App Store and deactivate it for the United States. Um, but he didn't, and nobody in his administration did, because they don't care what this does to us. They were more mad that they felt like probably it hurt their tiny little baby egos, that everyone was mad at them, and that they got what they wanted and then acted like they didn't want it. They were like, we're trying to find a way to not ban TikTok. I'm like, why did you literally sign this bill?
Yeah.
If you don't want to do it, I don't know, don't do it. Like, this is your idea. Like, so why are you acting like it's not? Just because now it's like getting you into a lot of trouble, because I guess you never thought through how censoring your entire country of people that use something for free would feel when you don't let us have fun, or tell us that we're not allowed to have fun unless you can control it somehow. Like, I don't know how you could ever possibly think that like censoring an entire app would ever go over well with anybody. But either way, that's what I mean, is that they could have just done it quickly. And there is that part of you that wants to be like, I'm just being dramatic. And it's like, no, they're being terrible to you.
Yeah.
That's the thing about it. You're having a normal reaction. Like, we spent like all of Saturday crying, and that was a normal reaction because we were totally at the whims of all these other people. We are losing this thing that we like, that it's a sense of community. It's nice escapism. It's a way for us all to interact and things like that. And we all were losing it, not because we wanted to, but because our government was forcing it away from us. And that's a horrible feeling, especially not even knowing when it's going to go down, because nobody will say anything and all that kind of stuff. Like, being that upset was a very normal reaction to something like that. Um, it ended up working out in the way that they were able to bring it back where we can kind of use it in this weird way until it breaks because it's not in the App Store and they can't update it. but at least for right now, it's still here and we can have it a little bit longer. But it was very much within your rights to be that upset, because that was a horrible thing. You should be upset when your government tries to censor something like that.
Hmm.
They shouldn't get away with it without people getting really mad.
Yeah, they reject bills for a lot less, for like bad wording in one sentence, sometimes even. They could have rejected this, being like, what is this doing in this bill? This doesn't make sense. Let's get a new aid bill, or let's strike that from this bill, even, is a part of like the legislative process that could have happened there.
Yeah, like, I will just say that the first time, at least over the last few days of TikTok stuff, when I was like crying and upset, was on Friday when the Supreme Court came back and agreed 9-0 to ban. I was like, you guys don't agree on anything ever. You have never agreed on anything my entire lifespan. And the thing that you unanimously, like, 9-0 agree with, is to get rid of this app. That is the thing that you all are okay with, is banning a social media app. Like, you guys argue about whether like children should be forced to give birth to babies that they're impregnated with for somebody who raped them. But with like, you think that it's okay for children to die in school shootings, and we'll argue about that endlessly, that children deserve to just be massacred because you want to make money off of the NRA. But when it comes to a TikTok app, you're like, yep, let's go. We all agree. And I was just like, that was such a betrayal to the people who are on that court that aren't even the ones that everybody hates. It
Mm-hmm.
was just like, why would you, what could you, especially because there was never any, the last thing I guess we can say about the TikTok stuff is that there was never any evidence of anything. Like, the stuff that they brought up was like, oh, it knows our IP address. And I'm like, so does the McDonald's app I use. Like, the McDonald's app I use when I want to get a breakfast sandwich one morning when I'm tired and I have to go to work, also knows my IP address, because it knows that it's me when I log into it or when it opens up on my phone. And it also has my GPS because it knows what location McDonald's to send my order to so that I get it in 10 minutes. You're
Yeah.
not banning my McDonald's app. That would be crazy, right? So why are you banning this app for the exact same reason? Like that's all TikTok does. It shows you videos from people who live in your area. That's how it uses the GPS thing. And you can
It's
add
just
location.
nothing that it knows that's sacred to me.
No.
There's nothing that it could know. It has my social security number even because I was monetized. And it's like, okay, that got leaked earlier this year, didn't it? So, or not this year, but like last year. It got leaked last year. So why should I care?
I really don't care. Like our all of our anyone who lives in the United States particularly, all of our data has been leaked by so many different companies. It's ridiculous. Like our information is probably out there somewhere because of our student loans.
Mhm.
And like I remember once somebody stole my debit card information like 10 years after I bought tickets to go on one of those New York City bus tours because they hacked into the bus tour database and they stole my debit card number out of there. I had like $100 on my card, and so they bought like $50 worth of stuff, and then I had nothing left because I am poor. But like that happened randomly. Like that kind of stuff randomly happens all the time. Like banks get hacked regularly, and like especially when you bring up like Facebook steals everything from everyone that you've ever met ever. And so like anyone who's ever used your phone, the Facebook app just like takes all of their data.
Yeah.
I still think it's one of the funniest things in the entire world that Apple adding that thing that asks you when you open up an app, like, do you want this app to track you? And you can say no. That when they added that a couple years ago, that cost Facebook like $3 billion, because that is how they make all of their money is they steal everybody's data and then they sell it to ad companies so that they can like sell us stuff with the data that they steal from us. And so when Apple added that to make it where we wouldn't be tracked all the time, they lost all of the money that they make on that on their website, which is when he started trying to lobby Congress to get rid of TikTok. um, but yeah, that was wild. Hopefully, we at least get a couple days to try to come down from all of that before. I mean, Trump is president, so it's just going to be like this now.
Yeah.
Um, just with all of the things that are coming out, like all of his executive orders and stuff, it's meant to be overwhelming. Um, so try not to look at it all at once. I was doing that earlier today and started just like inwardly panicking, like thinking of all the different people that are in danger and all the different things I felt like I needed to do to help them. And it's like physically impossible to do that. Like right before I went live, I saw that something about how he was stopping all of the programs when it comes to immigrants. Like, there's an app that people who are in Mexico can use to make appointments to like go through like the proper process to come into the country. And he got rid of the app, which canceled all of their appointments.
Oh my
And
god.
so, like, imagine for like years of your life working so hard to get that appointment to get into the United States, and then Trump becomes president and just deletes the app, and your appointment's gone, and you don't have anything anymore. And I saw another story of like people from Afghanistan wanting to come here, including family members of people that are in the military here, like serving still in the U.S. military, were okay to come here to live here, and he's canceling like all of their flights right before they were supposed to come here. And so it's like, where are they supposed to live? Like when you move to another country, you usually tell people where you live that you're not going to live there anymore. So like, where are those people supposed to go? And so that is just how it's going to be when he's president. That's how it is when he's president. He's using the literal like abuse cycle to terrorize everybody. And I hate that we have to do it again. Um, but
Yeah.
just try to take it in little bits at a time and just try to remember that um, that just because he says he wants to do something doesn't mean it's gonna happen the way that he wants it to. And even if he does um, get to do some of those things like he wants to, we'll find some way to survive. Like, apparently my gender doesn't exist, so I'm just invisible now.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So that was another thing that I wanted to bring up. It was something that he said, like, from now on, only two genders are recognized in this country. And, like, I mean, that may be true for what he says, but it's not true for what I say. But also, it almost feels comical. I was telling Shannon this right before we got on. It feels like a headline from The Onion. The fact that he even felt the need to declare that, like,
Yeah. And it also is just one of those things of like, you know, that you can't do that. Like, you can't control what people think about
mm-hmm.
that. Like, that's like people saying your favorite color is blue. And it's like, no, it's not. Like,
Yeah,
you can't tell me what that is. It's the same kind of idea. And it's just wild that they think that they even can do that, or that because that's what he believes, that he can just, you know, make everybody else go with that because that's what he wants. It's like, I don't care what you want. Like, I'm not going to suddenly just be like, oh, yeah, totally. My gender doesn't exist anymore. Like, oh, yeah, like, you know, all those kids that I see videos of that make me cry sometimes because they're so sweet, that talk about how they love the Magnus Chase books because it helped them understand their gender identity more. Definitely, all those kids definitely aren't that anymore just because you say so, you fucking weirdo. Like, I don't care. Like, just because I say that your skin is orange doesn't mean you're gonna stop looking orange. So why am I gonna listen to you about what you think about my gender? Like, I'm not. Um, but it just
lots to take advice from.
yeah, and it's just something else to just make you feel terrible.
Yeah, so things are getting pretty silly already is what I wanted to talk about, and just it's probably gonna get all the more sillier because I saw this one picture from the inauguration today where it was like a side lineup and you could see like Zuckerberg with his crazy ass hair right now and Musk and I forget there was some other billionaire in the
Jeff
picture and I was
Bezos,
just like,
Jeff
oh my,
Bezos from
I don't know
Amazon.
if he was sitting near them. I don't think he was close enough to them for the picture, but like,
He was sitting next to him. He was the bald one.
okay, yeah, it was like the back of someone's head, so maybe that's why I didn't see it was him. But like, oh my gosh, I just it feels so it feels like something from a sci-fi movie from like the 80s or 90s that was meant to be comical.
Yeah,
It doesn't feel real.
yeah. There is that feeling. I remember that feeling when he was president the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it is one of those things that, as things happen, people will just we will do what we always do, which is like find a way to like push back somehow. Whether it's aggressively getting to know Chinese people that are actually absolutely adorable. Like, the Red Note app is adorable. Like, if they ban it, I will be so upset because they're just very sweet. And our interactions are very sweet because we're just getting to know each other in fun ways that we've never really been able to do before.
Mm-hmm.
It's just fun. But like, whether it's that or during the first time he was president was when the Me Too movement became like huge. That wasn't like a funny happenstance, that happened because he was president.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of things like that happened because he was president. And a lot of just reactions to things like that happened. And so we'll see like how those things happen during these next 4 years after we had like a 4 year break from him,
Yeah.
to see how different that kind of stuff is now.
Yeah. Well, I didn't watch the inauguration. I've only seen clips so far. Yeah, I'm sure you couldn't stomach it either. And if you guys couldn't stomach it either, like, do not feel bad at all. All of the important bits are going to be captured elsewhere.
I guess I'll say that I have not like voluntarily like listened to Trump talk since 2015.
Hmm.
I don't listen to him talk. I don't like I will look at pictures every once in a while, but I kind of have to sometimes just from being on social media. but I don't voluntarily listen to him talk or even read the words that he says or look at his face or anything like that because he reminds me a lot of my dad. And um, so I don't know. I have not seen a presidential debate since 2012 because
Okay.
he's been in all of them ever since then. And I'm just never, I'm never going to watch him or listen to him. Why would I do that to myself? And
Yeah. So glad this is the last time he can be president.
I know. And so that's honestly, if you want to do that, just go, just do that. You're not hiding from him. You don't need to put yourself through watching him. If you
Mhm.
don't, if you're not somebody that can like, take him in without feeling really upset, then you don't need to watch him. Just ignore him as best as you possibly can. And I just hear about the things that he does through other people that are reporting on it. That's all I really need to know is just what is going on to know like what's what he's doing that could be hurting people.
Yeah.
Um,
Make sure it's a news source you trust, of course, but like it's okay to just get the headlines when it comes to him.
I think the only time I've listened to him or heard him since like 2015 was that audio that was going around on here of him talking about his daughter
Mhm.
and about how like, oh, my daughter is so hot and things like that.
So weird.
Like, I only listened to it one time just to post a video to be like, oh, people used to sometimes ask me like, oh, how did your dad get away with things? And then I'm like, well, this is how because nobody cares.
Yeah.
Like this dude was on TV talking about how hot he thought his daughter was and all these very inappropriate other things, but particularly about his daughter. And nobody, and the host of the things was just like nervously laughing at him, like he was just being like a funny old man. That's just what people do. They just don't say anything. That's how that happens.
You
Um,
know, the one thing I just really wonder with him and have been wondering for years is like who in his makeup department hates him that has never blended out to his ears. Like, because I mean, that's one thing that I kept noticing today at the inauguration pictures too was just he still has that line. And it's like somebody just needs to blend him out.
no, now it's his like whole
Yeah.
thing.
It's
But
like he's wearing a mask.
yeah, I also feel like he's one of those people that that's just what he wants, and if you don't do it how he exactly wants it, then like the world is gonna end. So you might as well just like fine, just look weird and orange. That's fine. But talking about Trump stuff, I feel like this is a slight detour, but it's still talking about SA stuff. But I feel like a new segment on this is just Becky Riordan is smart
Yeah.
because that's just something that we do talking about the stuff that she says about whatever on
Mhm.
threads. It's worth it to be on threads just to like see the interactions that she has with people because they're always very interesting.
Yeah.
Um, but there was a story about Neil Gaiman in the news this past week, and nothing in this world could make me read that article.
Mhm.
I asked somebody somewhere on social media somewhere like what the trigger warnings were in it, and then I was like, okay, no, I'm not reading that. I'm
Yeah.
definitely not. That's not an article for me. I didn't think it would be. But when normal people are saying that the article was so bad that they almost couldn't read the entire thing, I get like morbidly curious about like how bad is this really? Like how bad could this really be that normal people are like horrified by it? And so when the people told me the trigger warnings, I was like, oh, that's why you all are horrified by it. But one thing that happens whenever an artist that's huge, like Neil Gaiman, gets revealed for being just a horrible, abusive monster, which, like, just to put aside, like, if you had any hope that maybe he wasn't as bad as he thought, his, like, statement that he put out the day after that article came out said that there was no way that there was ever any abuse. And I'm like, you quite literally cannot say that. You can never like definitively say how another person felt when they were around you. That's just abuser. Like number one, if you ever want to know if they feel like they can control how you feel about them, yeah, Yeah, that's run away from them if they think they can control even how your thoughts are in your own head about them when they're not even there. Yeah, that's all you really need to know about that to know what kind of person he has been this whole time, I suppose. So, one thing with me that is like funny is that sometimes people get revealed for things like this, and they're like artists that for whatever reason I just like never wanted to watch anything or read anything that they ever wrote. And I'm like, what was it about you that I was just like bad? Like, I don't know what it was. Like, I remember I think it was Neil Gaiman that did an episode of Doctor Who when Matt Smith was on the show, and it was an episode where the TARDIS became like a person, like a woman, and then like went back to being the TARDIS at the end, and it was fine of I guess for an episode, but I don't know. I just like never found him. I don't know why. Like, because so many people love him in like sci-fi fantasy stuff, so he was someone that people always talked about. And so he was someone that I felt like I was supposed to be reading his books, but I just never wanted to. And I don't know if that was just being me and not wanting to like somebody who's really popular, or if there was something about his stories that I heard somewhere and like just made me not like him, even though I dissociated it away and I don't remember what it was anymore. Because that honestly could have happened. Because the stuff that I guess the thing I was trying to say about Becky is that one thing that is aggravating when a big artist like Neil Gaiman is revealed to be like this is that almost immediately people jump to the discussion of like trying to figure out whether they can enjoy his art still.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish that people would like take a little bit longer
Yeah.
to get to that because they immediately go with how this affects them. Like, oh, I can't enjoy this movie or this book or whatever anymore. And actually, our both of our mutuals, Jean, she posted a video that was done by Council of Geeks on YouTube that was done by a trans woman that was talking about the same kind of thing with Harry Potter, where people will make videos being like, "Was Harry Potter ever good?" And it's like it doesn't matter anymore. Like
Mm-hmm.
that, but it legitimately doesn't matter if it was ever good or not because, and if your reaction to hearing about J.K. Rowling is, well, I never liked it anyway because it wasn't that good of a story. Like, what do you? That doesn't matter because she's doing horrible things, and that's the only thing that actually matters. Talking about whether the story is good or not is like downplaying how much harm she does to people in the same way that it is with him. And so it's just a frustrating thing to see how immediately people go to that instead of focusing on like the things that they've actually done or like thinking about the people that went through what they did with that person and like how other people feel because it reminds them of things they went through with other people and things like that. And it becomes more just about them. And I'm like, I don't care about you. Like, not to sound mean, but I don't care if you can't watch like the Sandman adaptation from a couple years ago anymore. Get over it. Somebody was raped. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care if you can't watch. And this is someone who loves media like that. Like in the long run, that does not matter. And so it was really nice to see Becky Riordan post and literally just post a link to the Boston Rape Crisis Center
Mm-hmm.
and telling people like you should give money to to a rape crisis center near you. And she included a paragraph from the crisis center's website explaining the kind of things that they do, where they have rape victims of any age, even children, that can go to them and talk to them and have it be confidential, where nobody knows about anything that you say. They keep everything confidential. That sort of a website is the kind where there's a little button on the website, even where if you hit the button, it immediately closes.
Mm-hmm.
And like a lot, domestic violence shelters are the same way, where there's a button on the website where if somebody like comes walking up behind you or something, you can hit that and it closes and just looks like you're looking at Google,
Yeah.
and they would never know what you're looking at. And so she was talking about how her and Rick gave money to the Boston Rape Crisis Center, because that's where they live now, after Trump was elected, which was the accurate way to respond to that too.
Mm-hmm.
And she was just saying you should give money to a center like this, but also make sure that it's a center that welcomes transgender people because there are rape crisis centers that don't. Like J.K. Rowling throws a fucking fit whenever she finds out about one that does, but there are ones out there still that doesn't allow trans people to go to those shelters, which is horrible because they
Very.
get that experience, honestly, the most out of everybody. Um, and then she just some. The thing that I liked was the other one that I sent to you was somebody posted, and they said like Rick Riordan better never do anything like this because all the other people that I idolized in like the 2010s have all done something just horrible. And she responded to it saying that her and Rick tried to watch the Sandman TV show adaptation, and
Mhm.
they like after like two episodes they were just like, I can't watch this. They just like couldn't do it for whatever reason. I don't know anything about that, so I can't even comment about why they didn't want to watch it, but it seems like a good hint of why they couldn't even get through watching more than two episodes of the show because it was just like too much for them.
Mhm.
And they were just saying they couldn't even finish reading the article about him because it was again like too much, and was just upset. And I'm like, that's all you should have to say.
Mhm.
Like they're not talking about whether you can still enjoy his art or not. They don't care.
Yeah.
And that's how this stuff should go. And it was nice to see somebody um, that I already respect greatly have always have the correct response when it comes to things like this. They always have the correct response because they actually care.
Mhm.
Like that's what it is. They actually care about people that have gone through that. Like if their book series doesn't give you that idea, or if you're feeling insecure about that because of other people, maybe making you think that they do, but then something like this happens, just this is a good indicator to find out when people actually do care
Yeah.
because they don't make it about themselves. They just make it about you or the people that have been hurt, and that's all that matters.
Mhm.
Just nice. I'm glad that I know that we talk about this kind of thing, but I legitimately hope over the next couple years that people stop idolizing celebrities or
Yeah.
like public figures that much because like I greatly respect them as like how they present themselves as people, but I don't actually know the Riordans.
Mhm.
I respect them a lot. I don't like idolize them. Um, like if I ever like met them in person, I would probably like cry to like thank them for writing these books and doing such a great job of not only doing that but also just like supporting marginalized groups in any way they can all the time, like using their position to do things like that.
Yeah.
Um, to just say thank you. But I there's a lot of people that I would do that with that aren't like well known famous people. It's not like an idolization thing. It's just like I really respect you as people. Some of
Mhm.
my some of my mutuals and stuff on TikTok, I respect like that the same way as them. It doesn't make that much of a difference to me anyway that they're like famous, obviously, but it doesn't matter. Like Percy Jackson could be some like random indie thing that nobody knows about, and I would like it just as much as I like it now.
Yeah.
And it's just a difference of how you like. I'm not gonna go into like someone's comment section and yell at them because they don't like Rick Riordan or like don't like his books or whatever. Even if I don't obviously don't agree, that's
Mhm.
not that's not my. I don't care. Like their opinion of what they think of his stories doesn't change how I feel about it.
Yeah.
So why would I spend my time doing that?
Yeah.
No. Um.
Um,
Oh, and then Rick. So they were on set for this past week.
oh
Um.
yeah, that was the big show news. I was like, I feel like there was one thing, but it was big but not big. And yeah, it was like it was one of those tweets that if you are a fan, you get it, and if you're not, you'll get it later. Um,
Rick is on Blue Sky.
Mhm.
And so basically, if you want to follow the Riordans, Becky posts a lot on Threads. Rick has a Threads account, but he like barely ever uses it.
Mhm.
Rick started posting on Blue Sky the last like week, and Becky said something about how she has an account on there, but she hasn't really used it that much yet. Um, but Rick was posting on there of like Rick things saying that like there was a cockatoo on set because they're filming the Cersei's island stuff, which at first I was like, why would they wait till the very end to film that? And then I was like, oh wait, there's a ton of animals.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense to like film that last so that if there's some weird complication with animals being crazy, that it doesn't mess up the schedule of every other episode. So he was talking about how there was a cockatoo on set that kept saying hi to him every time he walked by. So he was like, so if you can hear the cockatoo in the episode saying hi to somebody, that was at me. And then he also said the thing about how he met the hamsters. And he was like, if you know, you know. Anything with the hamsters is just so funny. Like I remember when way back when Walker Scobell was first cast and he was the only person that was cast. Remember seeing a video that somebody posted on Twitter before I think I was on I think yeah, I was on TikTok by then. But I remember it was somebody posting a picture up the picture of him from like the promotional thing. And it was just the picture of him and them saying like he's gonna make a really cute hamster. And I was like, oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And
Yeah.
now we're almost there.
I can't wait for the pictures on set of just like him and his hamster just taking.
The behind the scenes stuff from that is going to be really funny.
Yeah.
And then, oh, the other thing that Becky said that I thought was interesting for her to talk about was she was talking about creative autonomy with like adaptations, which is something we've talked about recently. And I liked how she put it, but it kind of started because there were people on Twitter that were talking about the character of Will, like or Will Solis is ends up becoming Nico's boyfriend, and he's in the Last Olympian book, but he's in it for like 10 seconds. Like he's not, he's just one of the other. He's like a named kid at camp. Like you know who he is. You know that he becomes like the head of his cabin at the end of the book because everyone else
Died.
is, and he's 13. And so he's the oldest one in his cabin when he's fucking 13. If that gives you any indication what happens in that book, if you've never read it before or haven't read it in a while. But he's not like the only reason that people know or think about him in that book is because he became a much bigger character in Heroes of Olympus when him and Nico started getting together, and then in the book since when they've been together. And so people on there on Twitter were talking about like, oh, would they put like a cameo with him in Heroes of Olympus or in like season 5 of the show? And Becky was saying like probably not because just the way that things work, like if you put him in for like a cameo in that season, it would be hard to have him be there for the Heroes of Olympus seasons when he's actually more important. Especially because if they do Heroes of Olympus one day, they would probably take a long time to cast it the same way they did with the original cast because they would have to, you know, get all of these brand new kids and make sure they're the right people, just like they were with the original trio. And so it probably would take a while. And so if you would cast somebody as Will, he would suddenly look like really old. If they actually took the time to like cast everything. And with a character like you know like Percy or Annabeth or whatever, that's not that big of a deal because we know them, we accept like who they are and what they look like, so we don't care about that kind of thing. But with like a young kid from like going like what people have said about like Walker from season 1 to season 2, if he's like 13 and then suddenly the actor's 15 and he's like grown like a foot when it's only supposed to be 4 months from when his character is seen, that's harder. Like when it comes with Walker season 1 to season 2, it's a year between when they see him anyway.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that he would grow that much in a year anyway. And so she was just talking about that sometimes creators have to have like creative freedom, basically, or like the term she used was creative autonomy, where you have to allow themselves to like be artists still and make art, even if they are adapting something that already exists. Sometimes it's easier for them to like make a new character that holds the same spot as a character that people already know, because they have to be able to be creative still. And like I replied to her about it and she agreed with me about Star Wars, that Star Wars is like the absolute worst example of like how bad that can be. Because what she was basically saying is that sometimes like fandom is mostly fine, but sometimes it can get like too like having ownership of this thing that you love is usually it's can usually be a good thing. But when you get to like the point where you feel like you have so much ownership over it that you're like controlling what the people who make it are doing, and like you don't allow them to just be creative and like make their own artistic decisions and choices because you just don't want them to, that's when things get really bad. And that's definitely happened with Star Wars, where
The
like
Raylo.
yeah, just that alone and how they like Raylo fans, if you don't know, like I'm not exaggerating, harass everyone, like
Mm-hmm.
everyone involved in Star Wars, like from people who just work for StarWars.com up to like the stars and the directors and the writers of the actual movies and everything in between. They put those weird scenes into Rise of Skywalker to try to like get them to not harass them anymore, but it felt out of place and not there because they forced it in just to try to please them so they would leave everybody alone. And they still don't. Like every once in a while a comic or a book or something will come out that just acknowledges that Kylo was the villain, and I'll see things about how they're harassing the author who wrote that book. And I'm like, that's literally just the canon of the movies. He is the villain.
Yeah, my I still haven't seen it fully, but Michael was telling me like part of the storyline is he basically does what Anakin did with the younglings with the news like Jedi, which is just extra devastating happening a second time when there's barely any.
Yeah, basically what it is this like the story of everything. They go over it in they show more of it in the Last Jedi. They show it a little bit of it in the first movie, and then they show the whole thing of it in the Last Jedi. But he was at like at like Jedi camp basically, like Luke was doing, where he was teaching them all how to do that on a different planet. Um, and it was him and like a bunch of his close friends. They all knew each other. They were all friends with each other, and he was being manipulated and stuff, sure, by the dude who wanted him to be on the bad side or what have you. And and like Luke saw like this vision of him turning like killing everybody. And so he got scared, and this is actually very consistent with Luke as a character, that he, which is why I like him, is that he like responds something to something like emotionally at first and then realizes like, oh, I need to calm down. Like in Return of the Jedi, he cuts off Vader's hand when he's angry trying to protect Leia,
Mhm.
from like trying to protect Vader from ever touching her. And when he sees that he's hurt him like that, that's what makes him stop and be like, well, I'm doing like too much. And so he sees that dream, he gets freaked out that Kylo's gonna kill everybody. Obviously you would be really upset by that. And he like goes to his like room where he's sleeping and thinks about doing something to him, and then he's like, what the fuck am I doing? And like literally it's like a 3 second thing. And of course Kylo wakes up when he and sees him in there. And the thing I always said to people when all this stuff was going on is like, if you wake up and you find like your uncle in there with you, think, and you realize that he was thinking about like hurting you or something, and
Mhm.
your response to that is trying to kill him, and only by a miracle is he not dead, and then murdering all the other children that you are friends with and leaving them all dead, and then you leave and go join the bad people, he was right about you. Like
Mhm.
that's not that's not like a good response. That's not like, if somebody did that to me, I would cry. I wouldn't get out my lightsaber and murder 20 people and
Yeah.
almost murder my uncle and try to spend a good time trying to murder my dad and my mom. That is not what I would do. And so that's it. It's one of those things of, it sucks that it happened the way that it did, and Luke of course blamed himself. Like that's why he was hiding out for all that time and things like that because he thought it was his fault and was just like, I just need to hide and never talk to anyone ever again because I made this happen and I can't handle it. And, but yeah, how is that not a villain? And that was before he killed his dad. He stabbed Han in the chest. He like sat there and thought about it and then watched him die.
Yeah.
That is very obviously a villain. And so Star Wars has gotten to the point where The Acolyte was a really good TV show. I haven't actually watched it because Reylo fans still make me hate watching anything new with Star Wars, but because they just ruined it for so many people. But um, I know that people really liked that show, and the show got canceled after 1 year because people were harassing people with it, and at this point, the fans that are like that just control Star Wars, and like Lucasfilm should like stop doing that. They should, grow some balls or something and just do the things that they want to make and even if those like that part of their fan base is angry, like stop catering to them and stop giving them what they want. Like I can't imagine like just with Percy stuff, like if it would be like if Rick Riordan like changed who plays Annabeth or something. Like he would never like he would never do he does the opposite. He like doubles down, triple, quadruples a million times down on that stuff. And so he shows that those people can't control how they do this production because they're going to do it the way that they want to do it, regardless of what those people say. Star Wars has let those people control things for so long that it's now so bad that, like, if those people think that this isn't Star Wars, then they just harass people until they stop making it, and that's just so toxic. And so I do think that the Percy Jackson show does a really good job of balancing that stuff of they still are making their own story. They still change things around or like add things in or have the potential to add on for more characters and stuff or more character development than there could be in a book when Percy was always the perspective.
Yeah.
That makes it still very fun and creative for everybody involved and not just boring. Like I know there's a lot of people that would like to do things in the Star Wars world that just don't want to because they don't want to deal with the fan base. And they just know that anything creative that they'll do, it will be like hampered by that. Like I think I like J.J. Abrams a lot when how he did Star Wars, and so I always end up defending him. But I think it is so funny that people hate The Rise of Skywalker, and the reason why they hate it are the scenes that he put in to try to get the rest of you to shut the fuck up. Like it was like you bitched and nonstop about the things that I did in the first movie. You like lost your mind about a girl being a Jedi and Finn being black and being a stormtrooper that broke out of a terrorist organization and got away and got free and all these sort of things. And so it's like you harass people so much for the creative decisions that I did. So I'm like, he's like, fine, I'm just going to do these like generic, stupid fan servicey things because apparently that's what you guys all want. I don't have time to like really write my own story anyway because Carrie Fisher died. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to give you what you think you want. Bye. And I think it's so funny that people hate him for that movie. And it's like, he just gave you what you guys say you always want all the time. Because you were harassing everyone, harassing him and the rest of the cast so much that he just didn't want to deal with it. And I can't blame him or the rest of the cast either for not wanting to deal with that. Yeah. And so I like that she brought that up because that is a really important thing. Because nobody will want to do your show if they feel like they can't really be and do the things that they really want to do. And I wouldn't want them to. Like that's the fun of an adaptation like this, is to see how these different people interpret the world, because it's always a little bit unique.
Yeah. And I like that this world is bigger than the world that we get in the books.
Yeah, like Rick did some interview or something this week where he just talked about how Clarice is going to be like a bigger part of season 2 and how he's excited for everybody to see it because he saw the first 2 episodes without any of the CGI stuff added in yet, and how he was excited for people to see it. And I was just thinking about it. I was like, if they give me like an angry like character like Clarice that's really angry at her abusive dad, I'm gonna like write more soliloquies to like this TV show. I'm gonna be so happy if they give that to me. It's gonna be, I'm gonna love her way more than I ever would have loved her in the books, and it's
Yeah.
gonna be really fun. I really want them to do that, and I don't know how they wouldn't, considering her character.
Yes.
But that's exciting, and that's something that is like added in from like what I already enjoyed in the book series beyond that, which is the fun of all this stuff. I like feel like we need to like retroactively defend adaptations.
Yes, I know. People got so off track with what we were trying to say that it's just like, no, we don't hate adaptations for the last time. Like, I love Disney's Hercules as bad as it is. I love Troy. I love, like, you know, I was enjoying parts of the musical that will not be named until we got to where we did. So,
Yeah, like there were things about it that was interesting.
mhm,
Um, Even talking about the stuff that I did enjoy was still interesting because
mhm.
it was interesting to think about how they were changing things and explaining why I didn't like it. Like just because it was critical doesn't mean that there's nothing interesting there to talk about,
Yeah.
um, or anything like that. So the thing quickly I wanted to do for this week talking about Titan's Curse stuff is what I was making videos about this week, which is about like Luke stuff.
Hmm.
Somebody, her username is like Soph. I don't know if her name is like Sophia or something
Hmm.
else. She makes fun videos, and I followed her because she made a video about Luke being an abusive little bitch. And so I'm going to follow you if you make videos like that. And she's great. And she made a video talking about the scene in that Thalia, when Thalia talks about how Luke was the problem the entire time
Hmm.
in the Last Olympian. And I asked a friend of mine to send me like screenshots of the scene because, or tell me where it was because I didn't want to read anything else in the book because we
Hmm.
haven't reread it yet. And so she sent me the scene, and I just made a video like reading it out. And um, reading the scene again just inspired me to talk about one thing with Luke that I think will be one thing with adaptations, especially when you're already like emotionally invested in a character and a character story, that I think is really interesting, especially when you bring like a book to like a movie or a TV show or something, is that fans can have like their own interpretation of how these things happened
Hmm.
when it's in the book. Even when you read the scene, like Thalia telling Percy straight up, like Luke was always the problem. Like Luke is why I died. Luke is why we had all these problems getting to camp. Luke was always like reactive and overly aggressive and didn't care about anybody else basically. And she tells him like do not start like thinking that because you found out about his sad backstory that you should like be nicer to him because no. Like it's too like especially right now, you can't
Yeah.
do that. Um because Annabeth is compromised. And so you can also be compromised. She basically says that in that scene like word for word.
Hmm.
Um and so that made me think about how one thing with season 2 that I think will be very intriguing to watch is the flashback scenes with them
Hmm.
because up until this point I think it's easier if you want to believe that Luke is somebody that was a nice person but then was manipulated by Kronos and turned into like this monstrous person. Like if you want to believe that, even if Rick put things in the book that counters that idea, like that scene with Alia, if you don't want to believe it, you can just kind of ignore that and just like have your own belief. But this being on a TV show is going to be a completely different thing because you're going to have to watch it. and um, and like one thing with the scene, I don't know why I didn't think about it that we're obviously going to see likely how they got to camp and how they died and all of the and like how she died and all of that kind of stuff because why wouldn't they show us a flashback of all of those moments and um and one thing that was fun to talk about it when it comes to like the overall arc of Luke until Titan's Curse it's like the main point that I always try to make with him is that he was not this like nice like kid that wanted to help people and then just got like super duper lost and manipulated or something. There were always things about him that were off, I guess is the best way to put it, or had these parts of his personality that was already like vindictive and angry and kind of like selfish, basically, that led him to be able to go as far as he did. Um, and it's always interesting for me to talk about people about the to people about this stuff because I think that one idea people have about abusive people is that they just like are super abusive, that they just like come out like that from like the womb, or that at a certain point they just are like that and they don't. But it's more the fact that people who are like that, who hurt people a lot, there are little things that they do that kind of give you an overall like clue or indication that something could be like they might not be like a necessarily like a safe person to be around, to put it like simply. And it's never as easy as like huge things, but they are things that like when you think about it you go back and you're like, oh, like why did they do that? And so the thing about the scene with when Thalia was talking about what happened in the past that I know I've brought it up before is that Luke blames it on Grover.
Mm-hmm.
And like he tells Annabeth, because Annabeth tells Percy later on that the reason why they got to camp and Thalia died and everything bad happened is because Grover got lost.
Yeah.
And like that's obviously not true when you like consider how Luke is and what Thalia tells us. Like, no, it was Luke fighting everything and everyone in our path because he was mad at his dad. He was
Mm-hmm.
mad that Hermes wouldn't tell him what he wanted. And so he was like just fighting with everyone and didn't care how it affected other people. And the thing about people who have the capabilities of being like an abuser is that they see the actions that they're doing that they want to do that are negatively affecting other people around them, but they never, never accept the fact that it's because of what they're doing that that is happening. Never do they ever like admit that, understand that, connect those two things because in their mind, what they want to do is has to be the right thing. There is no other option. Like if they want to do it, they're going to do it. And like so if you're upset or bad things are happening because of the things that they are doing, it can't be their fault because how could what I want to do be the wrong thing? It has to be that it's somebody else's fault, and so they blame everyone else. And so in Luke's mind it's like, well, it's not my fault that like 7-year-old Annabeth had to stab a cyclops and be horribly traumatized by that experience. It's my dad's fault. It's the god's fault. It's Grover's fault because he got lost. And it's not that it's my fault that Thalia sacrificed herself because even she at that point knew that Luke wouldn't be the one to do the right thing. That she was the one that sacrificed herself, not him. He didn't think about doing that to protect them. So how good was he as a protector if he wouldn't even do something like that to protect these children that he was all older than? He was the oldest one there. Um, no, when that happened, he once again blamed Grover. And like Grover at that time, because of how Sator's age, he looked like a 7, 8, 9-year-old child.
Mm-hmm.
Like imagine like a second grader, seeing like a second grader and blaming them
Yeah.
for your shortcomings or like the fact that you went on a violent rampage and there were like actual effects to you going on a violent rampage and everyone around you was being hurt by it and you just kept going anyway. And like it's just as like a sad thing but also just the truth of how when people are like this how they affect the other people around them. That like Grover, his entire arc in the first 5 books is because of Luke. Like his arc in the first 5 books, especially the first one, is that he thinks he needs to prove himself as a good protector, and that this he feels he's also anxious in the first book that he's not going to succeed, or that something's going to happen to Annabeth and Percy, and then they're never going to let him do this ever again. And the reason why they are doing that is because they took Luke's word that it was his fault that this happened and Thalia died.
Well,
It,
I would bet anything it didn't happen like Luke blaming it on him specifically, but more Grover being like, "Oh, well, I got us lost," and then Luke being like, "Yeah, you did," and like just running with it, like, "Yeah, it's really a shame that we got lost." Um,
I could
so
even see like because it came from Annabeth, like why Percy knows about this is because Annabeth tells him. I could even honestly see that like she would have asked him like what happened, and because she was a 7-year-old little kid, and he would have said that
yeah,
instead of like what actually happened. Oh, like, oh, Grover got lost and that's why we were delayed. And I guess the point I try to make with this stuff with him is that people can do like things that have long lasting effects on a person's life, but that don't maybe look like really horrible decisions that they're making.
hmm,
But when you think about it, the fact that Luke watched Grover like struggle with feeling like he was good enough, not being allowed to be like a satyr and be out there for like many years after this happened, feeling like he needs to like prove himself to everybody, otherwise he's never going to be able to go on one of these trips ever again, which is like the whole point of what he wants to do. And to know that all of those years that's happening because of something he said, and he doesn't like say anything about it. He doesn't like tell any like he doesn't go to the Satyr Council and tell them like it wasn't really Grover's fault, it was actually mine. He doesn't do any of that. He just like lets it happen because then people don't question him about what he was doing. And he doesn't question himself about that. He thinks he can do whatever he wants. And so um why would he do that? But it's like it's those things that like make you look back at the person and realize like, oh, there's like some sort of empathy missing with you, because most people would feel so guilty about somebody, especially a sweet, like such a sweetheart like Grover is, and
hmm,
especially when he looked so young. But even if he didn't look young, with a Grover in season 1, he's a absolute sweetheart baby child. Like the idea of blaming him for something that you did wrong, and just like letting him be his super empathetic self and just blame himself for everything when it was actually you. Like it's a very easy choice to pick him because he would think that it was his fault and he wouldn't really fight you on it. And it's just that sort of an idea of like he just doesn't accept um that it's anyone's fault. Like he could never hold like any personal responsibility for anything that he ever does. And that's like the consistent thing as you go through the story as things get more intense. Like the other thing with him, I suppose, in the same sort of way, is even the TV show did a good job with this, where when Percy confronts him about trying to fling him into hell,
hmm,
and the only thing he says is, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that you were going to give Grover the shoes."
yeah,
And so he's not like apologizing for trying to fling him into hell. He's only apologizing because his friend almost got flung into hell in his place. And so he doesn't think that what he did was wrong. He just is sorry that he almost made it happen to the wrong person.
yeah,
So that's like a big thing that he's not acknowledging about how horrible that is to do to a person. In the same way that when you get to Titan's Curse, he's trying to convince Thalia to be inhabited by Kronos and
hmm,
like take his place. And he's like, "You have to save me from him, please, Thalia, help me." And it's like, you did this, dude. Like you tried to fling a 12-year-old baby child down to into Tartarus by himself when he had no idea what he was doing. You didn't even know how to use your powers. You sent him down there so that Kronos would just inhabit his body and he would die.
yeah,
And that didn't work because he was thankfully able to stop you from that ever happening. But that was your first plan, and then your follow-up plan is to try to get somebody that you call like one of your best friends who just came back to life after she was a tree because you didn't help her. Um, You try to force her to take your place? Like, you try to take her life away all over again? And especially the fact that he's like, please help me. Like, no! But it's just like that sort of an idea that he's expecting these people that care about him to just give up their entire lives, their entire livelihood, to just do something for him so that he doesn't have to. And it's like, why do you think that you get to do this to people? Like, or like, why would you think that how could you even ask somebody to do that for you? Like, I feel bad doing stuff like that, asking people for the most simplest things. Like, imagining just being so sure of yourself that you ask somebody to give up their entire life so that they can be inhabited by an evil god that wants to murder everybody you've ever met. And then getting upset when they tell you no. Like, no. But that's just his whole thing. Is, I guess the point I was trying to make with that stuff was that Luke from the beginning was never like this nice person that was doing these things to help the other kids at camp, because that was never his motivation. Like, he wasn't angry in those scenes when he was like fighting all of those monsters and things like that before they got to camp. He wasn't angry about the way that the other kids at camp were being hurt or anything like that. He was angry that his dad wouldn't tell him what his fate was. Like, he was mad about about the state that his mom is in. Understandable. And then he was mad mostly about the fact that Hermes wouldn't tell him what he wanted to know, on top of, Hermes not being around. And he lost it and just started fighting everything because he was so angry. But that wasn't about other people. That was about him. He didn't get what he wanted, and he was mad about himself and throwing himself his own little pity party by just attacking anyone, and felt like that was fine. And it's the same thing like a year after the stuff with Thalia happens is when he goes on his quest, which is fighting Ladon, the dragon that's also in Titan's Curse. And he gets Hermes to let him go by himself instead of with two other people. And he isn't able to attack Ladon, which, considering he has like 100 heads, yeah, that makes sense. You couldn't do that. But he, that's a crazy sort of thing to try to do by yourself. But when he comes back from that quest is when he says that he thinks that the gods should be like overthrown. And so that's not about like, it would be one thing if you hear these stories from Luke that he like saw the kids in like the Hermes cabin not get claimed, and how watching them for all these years not get claimed, or like seeing kids go on quests and getting hurt and then coming back, and some of them never coming back, and seeing how it affected everybody at camp and how sad everybody was. But there is nothing, literally nothing in any of the books or any of the other stories added on after the books were over that ever gives you the indication that Luke ever cared about any of that, because he never talked about that. The reason why he got the most angry beforehand was Hermes not telling him something. The reason why he got mad later was because he failed his quest. And to him, the reason why you go on quests is to get notoriety so that people are afraid of you and you can get them to do what you want. Like he tells Percy that in the second episode of the TV show. That's what Luke thinks quests are for, and that's why he wants to do them. And so to him, the worst thing in the world was failing at the quest, because he can't use it to control other people and get what he wants and have that notoriety and fame and stuff that he wants. He wants everybody to adore him and think that he's the most amazing person on the planet. He cannot like pull his head out of his ass long enough to realize that all of the kids at camp already feel that way about him. Mm-hmm. They already love and adore him that much. If he just would get over his own ego, he would actually notice that, but he never does. And so none of that stuff is about any of the other people. That is about him personally. And when it comes to other people like Percy, the reasons why he's upset at the gods a lot of the time is because of other people. It's because of what he sees other people go through. He's upset that he was claimed at camp right away, but most people aren't. and he doesn't like that. He didn't like right away when he gets to camp. He's talking about how messed up it is that he's never met his dad before. He doesn't know who he is, but he's at this camp anyway, and he doesn't even and that he's just here, and that there's no guarantee that he's ever going to be claimed by his dad, but he still has to be here anyway. Like, he's feeling that way after he's there for 10 minutes because he sees how it affects him and also everyone else who's in this cabin with him who don't know who their parent is either. And so the reason why he's upset is for like very valid reasons, because he sees how these things affect the other people around him. He sees that like Grover can't go on quests, and that Annabeth has never talked to her mother either, and has been like stuck at camp since she was 7 years old. And those are the things that affect him. He's not thinking about himself. Like, there's times when he could talk to her to Poseidon, and he doesn't want to.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the first book, he does end up talking to Poseidon, but he doesn't go to do that. He goes to try to stop a horrible war from breaking out. Like, talking to Poseidon is the last thing he even want. He doesn't even want to talk to him, and so it's not like something like that. He's not doing this stuff to get like attention. He doesn't actually want attention. He's just doing it because he has to. Basically, there's nobody else. But there's a big like distinction there, and I think that's always a fun thing to think about with Luke. And it's just really fun for me to imagine how they're going to show that flashback stuff on the show, because it does make it very. The scene with Thalia is extremely clear. Like, it could not be more clear. She literally, like, I don't know what Rick Riordan could do but to like stamp this on his forehead and just point at it whenever somebody is trying to defend Luke, because she literally says the words like we are all demigods, our parents are never around, we all go through really bad things. Luke made bad choices.
Yeah.
You can't like feel bad for him because we all go through bad things, but he is the one who did this. And I'm like, thank you. Like, that is what I say all the time too. Like, I guess one of the things with Luke that I always get frustrated by is people are like, you don't have any empathy for this, this character who's like a young kid. And I'm like, I do have empathy for him, but my empathy doesn't supersede the things that he does to other people that are also going through just as many things, sometimes more.
Yeah.
He is. Like, that's always a thing that people get caught up on when there's any sort of abusive person at all. They they have a hard time separating those things. But it's like, you can have empathy for somebody, but if you have it only to like get themselves out of any responsibility for the ways that they're hurting people, that's not real empathy. You're just looking for a reason so that they don't have to be held accountable. And that's just like enabling them to continue to do what they want to do. Like, I can have empathy for somebody and still talk about why something they did was hurtful.
Yeah.
That they need to stop. And it's not that hard, honestly, when you think about it. Like Neil Gaiman is a good, I guess you can use him as an example because we were talking about him before, that he, wrote stories and things like that a lot of people really liked, that had themes that they really enjoyed, that ironically were about, I guess, how women are hurt sometimes. That's what I saw a video of somebody talking about one of his Sandman stories that had a theme like that now feels much more sinister after finding out what he was like.
Yeah.
But like, people can like remember those stories, enjoy the themes that he was making, and still appreciate those things, but then they can also be like, but what he did is so messed up that I need to like not like engage with it for a while because he did such horrible things, and I don't want to seem like I'm justifying those behaviors. Like, if somebody pops up and is like, oh, Neil Gaiman was traumatized as a kid, it's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's honestly that simple. Like, oh, J.K. Rowling was sexually abused and that's why she decided to hate trans people. I don't care. Like, I'm sorry that she experienced that at a point in her life, but the fact that that experience has made her turn into such a monstrous piece of garbage doesn't mean that I'm going to like just wave away all of the harm that she's done because one bad thing happened to her. And I always talk about this stuff because lots of really bad things happened to me, and I never wanted to hurt anybody. Like, yeah, sometimes there were times when I would want to, as like a passing thought, when you're like fed up with people and you're tired of it, but nothing in like a serious way. Like, I get scared that I am hurting people somehow, and I don't realize that I am. Um, it's honestly not that hard when you've gone through really bad things to not. Most of the time, we don't want to. Most of the time, when you go through really bad things, you have so much empathy for everyone else because you know how horrible you felt, and you don't want anyone to feel as bad as you used to feel all the time. That's most of us. It's a more like rare experience to be the kind to just be super vindictive towards everybody for the rest of your life. Um, but I do think that's a good point to make, especially considering that the show is going to come out somewhat relatively soon. It's going to come out at some point this year, and it's going to be really intriguing to watch Luke as the years go on because a lot of people's like ideas about him are just going to be shattered as it's one of those things of it's easier to maybe like ignore the like massive hints that Rick Riordan is trying to give you if you don't want it to be true. But when you literally like are like watching these things happen on screen, you can't do that anymore. You have to actually sit there. And one, I did notice when season one was airing that some people would get upset about like, oh, this was never in, this is different from the books, and it's like, no, it's not. And I saw so many videos of people being like pulling out their books and like reading a scene from the book that was the exact same as the TV show. And I'm like, you were 10 years old when you read this for the first time, and you didn't understand the context maybe of this scene, and you maybe haven't read it in a while, but you need to go back and actually read it if you're going to say that it's different from the story, because it's actually not. It's the exact same scene, the exact same thing happening. You just don't remember it that way. And so I feel like a lot of that stuff is going to happen with, especially with Thalia and him.
Yes.
Realizing like, yeah, this it's not going to be as like happy as I think people kind of try to like romanticize their interactions a bit. Um, and I will say, reading that scene with her in The Last Olympian was really nice, considering how she was in Titan's Curse. Is
Yeah.
not like that at all. Like, she definitely, I will give her credit that at the end of Titan's Curse, she was like, I'm joining the hunters because I don't want to go on a quest ever again.
Yeah.
I was really bad at it, and I don't, you like, Percy bails her out at every possible turn, and she's like, I'm not good at this. I don't want to do that ever again. As like a demigod, I guess, without like also being immortal. And she just is like, I need to get away from Luke. I need to get away from him. I need to not see him anymore. I don't want to ever even think about being tempted into, killing the gods and things like that, like, and how he was trying to tempt her into doing it, and like was kind of close to succeeding. And she was just like, I need to leave and deal with this so that I'm never tempted to do this sort of thing ever again. And the next time she pops up is in The Last Olympian, when she's dealt with all of that, and it's like, you were right. He was always the problem. I just didn't want to admit it, because I didn't want to admit that I was wrong. But she realizes that she was, and tells Percy exactly what he needs to hear in that moment. Like, I don't think that Percy was gonna like give in with like being nice to Luke at all, but it does make it a lot easier, especially the way that she presents it. Is like, the last line from that scene is Percy saying, like, thinking about how all the sleeping people in New York City are being affected by Luke's bad choices. And I'm like, I love that Rick put that in, because so much of Luke is eugenics on steroids. He doesn't care about normal people. He has a sword that can kill them when he doesn't have to kill normal humans. They can't hurt him.
Yeah.
But he sees them as less than. But one of the things that motivates Percy and the other kids is that the things that Luke is doing, especially at the end, is affecting normal people. And that's when they know that it's gone too far and they need to do something right now to stop him. Because it's affecting normal everyday people that don't have anything to do with any of this. Um, it's just that like simple bit of empathy that Luke just, I don't know. You can't really ever say why he doesn't have it. It's not one of those things you can drive yourself insane. Don't do that. Trying to figure out why they just don't. Sometimes you just have to like radically accept at a certain point that they just don't. Um, there isn't. You're never gonna find like a definitive thing that happened to them to explain why. It's just some people. That's just something that happens, and it's not something you can ever figure out. But it's just how they are. And with him, that's just how he was. Um, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see Charlie play it on camera. I mean, I scrolled upon like it. I don't want to call it a thirst trap because it wasn't like pictures of because you know he thirst traps, but it wasn't that. Somebody had posted pictures of him with an ex-girlfriend.
Oh
And
yeah. Oh yeah. That made me uncomfortable.
yeah, they were like, "Oh, Charlie looks like he'd be such a good girl or good boyfriend." It's like I know that they're gonna do that shit with Luke. I know they're gonna do that shit with Luke in just a few months, even though he's gonna be doing terrible things on screen, and I hope it doesn't happen, but it's gonna happen.
Yeah, that's why I honestly like that the show is going to show us all the flashbacks with Thalia because people like romanticized him and Thalia a bit and force
Yeah.
you to see like how that actually would have gone will, change that a bit. And I also this is also why I like that they're adding and letting us know his like people like Chris Rodriguez and Allison and whoever else is on his team that we don't even know about yet. I'm glad that they're showing us more of those things and those people because it will give like a little bit of it'll show what he was like more.
Yes.
And that stuff will kind of like people can think that Charlie is attractive because he is conventionally attractive, but it is one of those things of those scenes will definitely likely reiterate like the issues with Luke that will make it a lot harder to like romanticize him just because he's good looking in that sort of way because in the books you don't like see him as like a leader or a boss or whatever he would be like. You don't see that stuff. You don't see him like how he talks to the other people or the decisions he has to make or the people that he hurts beyond when he's hurting like our kids. But you kind of hear that they're doing things, but you never like actually see it. And so adding characters like that will make people actually see it. And that will make it and I like that they're adding that stuff in to like show the dynamics of the other side because that's really fascinating to think about. But I do think that that stuff will help like stop because it reminds me of like how people would get Death Eater tattoos. And that kind of thing is already kind of happening with him where people are like feeling like they need to defend him and in wild ways because he's good looking and they just find themselves doing that and so that's kind of in Harry Potter she never really did anything to like stop that. She made them these like mysterious like powerful fighters that had a weird creepy ass tattoo but she's a bad writer so she never did anything that like made it definitive about why they are bad because she can't do that when she's it doesn't know. Yeah. Just like the way that she writes the story she like has decided that they're bad because they're bad and that's as far as it goes with her and so there's no like bigger story or message or whatever that she's trying to do in the way that like Luke very obviously is a bigger message about a lot of abusive people out there like him. And so there's nothing to add on, but with Luke, there is so much to add on, especially with like the manipulation and grooming and using the fact that he's good looking to hurt people. That's such a huge part of his story, the way that he grooms people to join him because they think that he's like a nice, trustworthy guy or that he's good looking and he uses the fact that he knows they have a crush on him to get them to do what he wants. it will be harder if they show that stuff happening, and I have to believe that it will because of Allison being a girl
Yeah.
and like being like somewhat close to his age. Um, that probably will happen in some of the scenes with them in season two, and that definitely is something that will kind of disrupt the facade a little bit of, because it's a lot harder to like just be like Luke is just a victim and he was traumatized and it's actually the gods are his fault when he's like horribly manipulating a girl that you get to know and watch him doing things that you know. That's honestly my favorite thing is when shows or books or media shows the villain doing villainous things by doing things that everybody like in our society knows is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so you cannot deny that what they're doing is wrong. Like we were talking about Star Wars before. Um, when in the second movie when Kylo is manipulating Rey for the entire movie, and then at the end of the movie he's telling her how she means nothing without him and that she has to join him because she's worthless without she he literally says that she's worthless without him.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like literally words that every abusive person ever says to anyone.
Yeah.
And so when that scene happens, even the people that like Raylo fans, they couldn't deny the fact that that happened and that he was wrong for saying that. And there's no way that even they couldn't. They would try to like work around a way around that scene as a way to somehow that he was like possessed or something like that, or that he was lying and saying hurtful things to hurt her on purpose because of whatever they were coming up with. But even they couldn't like justify that scene because they knew how wrong it is to talk to people that way, and
Yeah.
they couldn't come up with something, and so they would literally like make up fan fiction about why he said that in a way that wouldn't be because he's a horrible person,
Oh God.
because they didn't want him to be a bad, which fine, like knock yourself out, I guess, except that you were harassing everybody. But beyond that, if you just did that and you weren't bothering anybody else, that would have been fine. But like with this stuff, it's going to be, I think, the same sort of thing, and it'll be very intriguing to watch, especially because like Charlie is this good looking nice guy, um, that it's like he's exactly who somebody who plays Luke should look like, honestly, because that's his whole character. He's like the good looking person that people don't want to be. For some reason people don't like the idea that attractive people are abusive monsters.
I don't know.
I don't know why they think that, but they definitely do. And so him, you know, doing this stuff is going to be really honestly, I think a lot about how so much of the themes with this show is like going to be intriguing to watch
Mm-hmm.
during the Trump presidency.
Yeah.
Just like the overall themes of things that they do and that they bring up about people like Luke, like grooming people and manipulating people and using the connections he has to get people to do horrible things and trying to control everyone, and especially the stuff with Annabeth is just god awful, and we haven't even gotten to the worst stuff with them. Shocking enough, it's in the next book and the last book, but especially in the next book. And so it's like all of that stuff is really hard to, but it's really good themes for when you have a rapist as a president.
Yeah.
Like I'm glad they're it's just kind of weird timing that this show is happening now, but I'm kind of weirdly glad that it is happening now because a lot of kids growing up are going to be watching this show, and this is a good show to be influencing them when a lot of the things that are out there will be trying to influence them to not care about people when this is the opposite. So there's at least that.
Yeah, that's good at least.
Yeah.
Really quickly before we get our end time, we should probably cover the Song of Achilles stuff. So for today, we read chapters 7 through 9, and chapter 7 starts off with I mean, it's mostly thirst. it's Patroclus really really thirsting over Achilles. And to me, this definitely reads 13-year-old boy. He ages them at the beginning of this, says we were just 13. Um, this feels like puberty. This feels like puberty. Like to me, as somebody who is like very, very into boys. But yeah, some interesting things. So he said that it seems like Achilles was maturing faster, which may be because he was divine. Here, I was still like doubting for some reason. Madeline Miller doesn't write the divinity in a way where it feels concrete in the beginning. Very much like Patroclus. Very like he's like, well, it's rumored that Achilles was born of a goddess, or things like that, to the point where it's almost like, is this what's happening? So here I was still thinking, like, okay, is this because he likes him, or is it because he's actually divine here? Then he kind of gets into how it's expected of boys their age, especially Achilles being a prince, to mess around with the serving girls. Like by now, they should have some experience under their belt, and neither him nor Achilles are interested. This whole chapter, that's basically what chapter 7 is about. That like they're both kind of not into it. Achilles always just says, "Oh, I'm tired," and Patroclus is just like nobody cares that he's not doing it. Like unlike Achilles, so he's just, yeah, I don't really care.
Something with that I was like greatly disturbed by was the scenes when they're trying to where his dad is trying to convince him to sleep with somebody.
Yeah.
I'm like, so just when I was reading this, I just like stopped for a second and I was like, is this book literally trying to say that Patroclus is gay because he is a 13-year-old who doesn't want to rape a sex worker that's being trafficked by Achilles' dad? Because that's what's actually happening. Those girls are being trafficked by his dad, and they're 13. And the way that this book explains it is that the only reason they don't want to rape a sex worker that has no way of saying no is because they're gay.
Kind of just it for Patroclus especially, that seems to be what the hint is.
And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
They could just be 13-year-old boys that don't want to do that. Like, 13-year-old boys aren't monsters. So I was just like,
I will say I was hypersexual very early. I was hypersexual very early. I was already talking about it at this age. So for me, I almost get how this culture came to be and how all of the other boys are just like into it. And how they're even saying like some serving girls kind of play the field too because they like it's just their reality. Um, I do understand that part, but yeah, like it's got to be so much harder. And this is where probably your perspective comes in a little bit more. It's got to be so much harder when you're not feeling that way, and everybody around you is, and you're just like, okay, I just don't feel this.
and it's also a thing of um, something that happens with epic people are saying this to us of like, oh, that's just how things happened back then. And I always am like, that's how things happen now. Stop being weird and acting like people like morals were like somehow more lacking in back then just because it was a long time ago. People, and that's what I'm trying to say is that people were the same. Like a 13-year-old now is the same developmental wise, like cognitive wise, emotionally, like development wise as a 13-year-old now back then. They're not like more mature then just because it happened a long time ago or because they were in like an important family. That stuff doesn't matter. And I can definitively say that because I went through a lot of really horrible experiences by the time I was 13. It had been happening for like 6 years, 7 years, 7 years. And so a lot of shit, like I had gone through like 7 different lifetimes by the time that I was 13. And so I know definitively for a fact that even if you are doing that, you're still not like an adult or anything close to it or actually making those decisions or even understand what you're doing. Like my dad was doing that to me for 6 years before I took I took sex ed since I was like 10. When I was in like fifth grade was the first time we did it. But even with that happening to me, I didn't fully grasp what I was really doing until I was in a longer sex ed class when I was in seventh grade, when I was like 12, and then I turned 13 at a certain point. And that was when it like really clicked in my head what we are actually doing and what we're doing is actually supposed to be when people do it the way that it was like intended to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't like fully grasp in my head like what we were even doing when I'd been like having to do that with him for 6 years by then. And
Mm-hmm.
so like a 13-year-old kid is not going to be able to make that choice. Like if adults around them are telling them you need to go sleep with this sex worker that I'm being forced to do this because I'm paying them and this is the only job and livelihood that they have, then they're going to do it because everyone else is telling them to, not because they actually want to. And that was the thing that bothered me, that I was like, kids that young are not suddenly more mature just because it happened or that because Achilles is a demigod or something.
Yeah.
Like Walker is 13 when he filmed season 1. Do you think that he would ever do anything like that or be able to, if somebody came up to him and offered something like that, that I would be in any way something that anyone should, or even if he would know at that age how to respond? He looked like a tiny little baby when he was that age because they are babies. And so that was more the thing that I was like, whoa, like what is this? And I don't even know like what this book is even trying to say about that. Um, because it's just said so matter of factly. The thing that more bothered me, that I was like, can I just make it a point that you cannot want to have sex with somebody when you're 13, especially, but at any point, you could not want to have sex with someone, and it doesn't mean that you're gay.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you just don't want to have sex with someone because you're not attracted to them, because they're a lot older than you, because of any reason, because people are trying to force you into doing it because you feel like you should. Like this, that's a whole I mean, I always talk about like male victims, but that's like something that a lot of male victims get stuck in, is they feel like they should be doing these things because people tell them that they should want that.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they do those things when they don't want to, they're basically being raped because
Mm-hmm.
they don't like, they're not actually consenting to it. They're doing it because they feel like they're supposed to. And they're worried that if they say no, they're not going to get acceptance from people. And so like that's actually something that happens, that a lot of male survivors think that they're gay because they didn't want to have sex with a woman. And it's like, no, that woman, you just didn't want to have sex with that woman and she
Yeah.
forced you to anyway. That doesn't have anything to do with your sexuality. Like, I don't, stuff happened with me like way too early on that I honestly don't think that I can ever figure out like if my sexuality would be what it is even without any of that ever happening. But
Mm-hmm.
there are some memories I have of just not liking that stuff. It feels impossible to ever figure out like why, obviously, because of how it
Mm-hmm.
was happening, even just like kissing or whatever. And I honestly don't know if I didn't like it because of who it was, or if I didn't like it because I don't like the sensory stuff of that. Because I know there are a lot of autistic people that are asexual because we don't like the sensory like overload of that sort of stuff. Some people really like it because they like that
Mm-hmm.
sensory input, and but some people hate it for the same kind of reasons. And so I guess I just wanted to make the point that just because somebody wants to have sex with you that is like the gender you think you're attracted to and you don't want to, it doesn't mean that you don't have that attraction anymore. And like I don't know what the hell, like we're very early on in this book, but that
Yeah.
just like threw me off because I was just like,
I think we're supposed to be getting the picture. He's recognizing he doesn't want that, while he's also recognizing that he does kind of have these weird feelings towards Achilles he can't explain. Um, so I feel like those two things are supposed to go hand in hand. It's not necessarily you're gay because you don't want to do that. It's more just like if I think you're supposed to be taking note of why is he only noticing Achilles.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
will say that the scene in like the next chapter when he just like goes for it and kisses him, and that it was such a 13-year-old boy like thing, that not only that he not that the kiss itself, adults do things like that, but it's such a 13-year-old boy reaction that Achilles just runs away and then goes back to their room and then is just sitting there waiting for him to come back because he's like, why did I run away from him? We literally lived together. Like, and he like wanted to talk to him again, but he was like, I am a 13-year-old boy and I over dramatically ran away from you. So now I have to wait for you to come back to actually finish this conversation. And it was just such a 13-year-old boy thing to do, to be sitting there waiting for him and be like, oh, you're back. And then it's like, oh, it's my overly like horrible mother that's here.
Yeah.
When I was reading these chapters, I was like, why is she doing the things that are triggering to both of us the most at the same time? Why is this?
Oh my gosh.
Why did
Wait.
she just? Why did she just do an entire section about 13-year-old kids having to have sex, and there's no way that they're consenting, and then she immediately goes into an overly controlling boy mom, and I was like, what's going on? Does she know us somehow?
Wait. So we're jumping way ahead, but like one thing I wanted to say, because this is still like super early on, when they were sitting in Peleus's bedroom before he offers up the serving girl,
Yeah.
he was telling the story of Meleager. And one of the things he said is, like, during the story, Meleager says, I'm not going to fight for Chalcedon anymore. Which, like, big foreshadowing for Achilles there. And then, like, later on, he says, they attacked and the city of Chalcedon suffered terrible losses. And Achilles is, like, trying to yank Patroclus out of a chair at this point. They're not paying attention. And Peleus was like, are you paying attention? It seems like you're just tormenting Scott over there, because he calls him Owl.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I'm tired anyways. But like that whole scene, the fact that he wasn't paying attention to his story, that's like, maybe you should pay attention to this one, Achilles.
Yeah, and he just is like I liked that scene just because that was them being 13-year-old boys.
Mm-hmm.
That's what 13-year-old boys, they do silly things like that, especially if they're around somebody that they like. That's like the thing closest to how they show that in a 13-year-old boy sort of way.
Yeah.
That was cute how they put that in, but it is funny how she puts these like big things in that are like giant like Greek mythology anvils, but because they're like young kids, they're just like la la la.
Yep.
I don't care about that anymore, or I don't care about that yet. They might care about it later.
So yeah, we jump ahead and eventually they're hanging out on the beach and Patroclus like leans in and he just can't even help it. He just kisses him. As so Achilles runs away. He knows swift-footed Achilles. He runs away so fast that it's like, okay, there's no way I was ever going to catch up to him. But as he's running away, he's thinking, oh shoot, I blew it. And like, dear gods, don't let him hate me. And then he was like, I shouldn't have called upon the gods, because that's when he just bumps into Thetis.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I was still doubting her divinity here for some reason. Like, I don't know why. Part of me, I've been ruined by the movie Troy because they didn't actually have the divine in it. And so, like the fact that she was going to send him off to Chiron, she's like, I'm sending him away. I saw everything. He's going now, and you're not going to follow him. Big boy mom moment. So they don't really even talk about it. It's just kind of like they ignored the elephant in the room. And then Achilles is sent off to Chiron pretty soon after that, like literally wakes up the next day and he's gone kind of thing. And Patroclus at one point just ends up looking out in the direction that he knows he was headed. And he's like, if I go right now, nobody's watching. Like, nobody's going to find me. And he just books it, like runs all the way there to the point where he exhausts his muscles. He runs for literal hours, it sounds like. And even after that was walking still. And then this is where I was like, okay, so the divine is real in this book. They run into Chiron.
Yeah.
So Achilles went when Patroclus was asleep. Patroclus bumps into him, and very soon after he bumps into him, Chiron finds them and he's like, Achilles, you're late. Why are you late? And he's like, oh, I was waiting for my attendant here, Patroclus. And so he's like, oh, I wasn't expecting him, and kind of gives him a little run, like a little once over of, okay. And then he takes both boys back. He lets them ride on him, which did they ever get to do that in Percy Jackson?
I don't remember.
I don't remember if they did at the end of Sea of Monsters. I guess we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but they ride Chiron back to his cave, which he says he doesn't even really like calling it a cave because it's rose quartz and it's beautiful. Um, and so they begin their training with him pretty soon after that. Let's see.
Oh, one thing I wanted to say about after the Thetis thing, before Patroclus like runs off to find Achilles again, that I liked that they did, that was like a theme of like PTSD and also like the divine, is how like he can't stand being there anymore because every time he smells like the sea or he sees it, it reminds him of her, and he just hates it so much, and he hates being reminded of it over and over and over again, and that's part of what just makes him just go when he knows that nobody is watching him, because he can't stand being reminded all the time about like the other people around are like not talking to him because they know that they're all watching him because Achilles is gone, and they're like wondering what happened, and he just keeps being reminded of Thetis every. That is such like a PTSD thing that would happen. Like if a god that like didn't like me, if I ever saw something that reminded me of them, that's what I would think of.
Oh,
And and I just like that little detail that she put in, that he was like basically being driven crazy by water and was like, I need to get away from this right now, and just like left because he couldn't handle it anymore. And so I just liked that little detail, and I liked how they showed Chiron because I like the version of Chiron where he's, in my mind, Chiron's a person that like cared about the people he was trying to help. And he's this like necessary sort of go-between person. Like the gods are out of control, and he's that person that talks between the gods and the demigods, or the normal people. But mostly, obviously, the demigods, because he's the ones who trains them all. But you need that sort of person to go between. Like when there's powerful people, you need somebody that's willing to like talk to them and try to deal with them, to try to negotiate things with them, so that the people that are being hurt by them don't have to do all that stuff on their own. And so it's fun to see him literally do that. Like from the moment they show up, I'm pretty sure is when, before they even go with him, he's like, yeah, your mom told me about him and told me that he shouldn't come.
No, he waits. He waits to reveal it, but yeah, he does eventually say, like, I was warned you'd be coming, and yeah, so
And she said that I shouldn't let you come.
yeah.
And he gives them like the chance to like, make their own decision. Like Achilles, he asks Achilles to explain why he wants him to be there and why he's a good like companion. And he takes Achilles' word for it, and he's like, I know how to deal with angry gods.
Yeah, he says, she will not be pleased, but I have weathered the anger of gods before.
Yeah. And so that's like exactly how I imagine Chiron to be, and it's why I always liked him in Percy Jackson too. That I think he is that person in Percy Jackson too, is that like person that is stuck in this like difficult role of having to help train people that are probably going to die young one day.
Yeah.
But he has to deal with their overly angry, vindictive, evil, sometimes like very, very powerful like parents, or just people, gods in some way, that can easily like smite him and them, and he is able to somehow like negotiate through those things successfully because they know not to mess with him too much, I think. But
Yeah, he's considered very wise, and I mean, like, he has an interesting history with Thetis. He's the reason her wedding got ruined. Her wedding was what started the Trojan War in a way. So it was the wedding to Peleus, where the golden apple gets thrown in. He was the one who decided, I'm not going to invite strife to the wedding, because for some reason he was the wedding planner. And so Strife throws the apple in that says to the fairest ones, and then there's a judgment contest between Athena, Hera, and Aphrodite, which causes the Trojan War. And I think that might even be like, I've weathered the anger of the gods before. Imagine that was your fucking wedding. Like,
Yeah.
and then you find out my son's gonna die in the war that you caused at my wedding.
Like, okay then. This sounds really fun. Um but yeah, I liked a lot of these scenes where they were training with him, and
Yeah.
I especially liked how he was just like, I will teach you whatever you want to know. And so whenever they asked him to, I liked the way that she talked about it, where like they would be doing something and they wouldn't know how to do it, and so he would just teach them things as they came up instead of it being like this overly structured
Mm-hmm.
thing or whatever. It was more like, oh, you guys are out in the woods and you don't know how to like make a fire or find food out here, then I'll show you how to do that. Um, and so it's all things that just like naturally come up, and that's just a much more natural way to teach people anything at all.
Yeah.
Um, I liked that because I don't like when I feel like it's like a white like lens over like Greek mythology when they do these scenes where they're like in a classroom and like learning things, because that's just like not how that's most of the time that's not how people learn generally in like a real way. And like imagine like Percy and the other kids at camp like sitting in like a classroom learning how to like fight or how to survive or whatever. They're like out on like obstacle courses doing these things because that's the way for them to actually learn how. And so I always can tell like in stories like who's directing it or who's writing it or something if they suddenly have like Greek mythology characters having like discussions with like books and stuff. I'm like, no, I don't think demigods care that much about reading books. Like they have a lot of other problems. They don't need to read a book right now. um but I really like those all those scenes. They were really interesting. Chiron's just an interesting character. But I will say that I think we're about to get there. The scene when Thetis comes back and she finds out that he's still there and
Yeah.
was definitely about to kill, like, strangle him to death. When that scene happened, I literally just like put the book down and like my Kindle down for like 20 minutes because I was just like, you know what, you're too much. Like I need a break from you right now because can we chill? Like, can are you trying to strangle a 14-year-old because your son is like probably in love with him or something at this point,
Yeah.
and you're like jealous of him? I, I every time she does stuff, I get like annoyed that that's her characterization in this story.
Yeah, so one that got me was so she stepped forward and the grass seemed to wilt beneath her feet. She was a sea nymph and the things of the earth did not love her. That was such a weird one. Like that's part of me is like, does she ooze salt water? Like how is she killing the plants?
Yeah.
That one was very, but it kind of it very much feels like her aura in this book. That it makes sense for this version of Thetis, but it's also like, but why?
Yeah. I just wish that it would have, like I was just saying about Luke stuff earlier, that you can recognize that somebody went through something bad and still recognize that the things they do suck. I just wish she was a little bit more empathetic about why she is so protective of Achilles and why she wants him to be a god so badly so that she doesn't lose him.
Yeah.
It comes off as just her being a horrible bitch because all the scenes that you see her in is her attacking a kid that hasn't done anything wrong at all, and she's just being so terrible to him. And it's just hard to have that empathy for her. Like, it's hard to feel that when that's the only times that you ever see her is when she's trying to like threaten him or kill him or just scare the hell out of him,
Mm-hmm.
and also is like trying to push Achilles into being a god when he doesn't really want to be one. And so it's like she's trying to like manipulate her son into doing that for her, or she's trying to kill his best friend. And those are like the only scenes you have of her, and that just kind of sucks. Um,
Yeah. Especially because Achilles meets with her in secret, so you don't even know like what their relationship is actually like.
Yeah. And I just wish that it wasn't quite so harsh, I guess. You could make her a very interesting character by just like bringing up why she wants that to be good, considering like how Achilles was born.
Mm-hmm.
And you could easily balance that of like her acknowledging or other people acknowledging at least like she wants him to stay with her so that something from this experience will make it worth it in the end instead of losing everything all over again.
Yeah.
Just like bringing that sort of idea up would be enough to make you still have some empathy for her, even if she's taking it out on a kid. Um, you can at least understand where that's coming from, especially because she's like a god and they aren't exactly known for being like emotionally regulated. Um, but it's just there isn't that kind of addition to it, and so it just feels like more harsh. And I just wish that there was more complexity, I guess, to it than just making her like a overly controlling mother.
Yeah. Um, so on the subject of like their greatness, kind of where we leave off at the end of these chapters is specifically so they train things like foraging, music, medicine, and survival skills out in the wild, but it's when they get to fighting that Chiron's watching them fight each other. He's like throwing in some moves with a spear here and there, and Achilles asks him, "Well, what do you think?" And he says, "There's nothing I can teach you. You know all that Heracles knew and more. You are the greatest warrior of your generation and all the generations before." So like Achilles is already so good. He's like, "I can't teach you anything, kid. You're great." But when it comes to Patroclus, um, he's like, "Hold on, there's people yelling outside. Sorry. You You'll never gain fame from your fighting. Is that surprising to you?" And Patroclus says no. And he says, "Yeah, it is not beyond you to be a competent soldier. Do you wish to learn this?" And he also says no.
Mm-hmm.
Which, like, I'm getting a very much not like other boys vibe, but because that would very much be expected of him too, especially like being a denounced prince, like the best thing you could do is be a competent soldier, really. Like it's the only honor you have left. And he's just like, "No, I'm a lover, not a fighter."
Yeah. I did like it was interesting to see him be like, "Oh, I want to learn how to do medicine
Mm-hmm.
and be able to like help when people get hurt and things like that."
Yeah.
Because it does make sense with how his character is presented in this story. Like, it makes sense that he wouldn't want to be like violent really in any way,
Mm-hmm.
considering that he accidentally killed somebody, sort of.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense considering that happened why he wouldn't want to do that stuff. He would probably be scared of himself on top of his dad, like of being like his dad on top of that too, of why he wouldn't want to be more violent. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but it is interesting to see how he does this stuff, and I don't know if this is like I don't know anything about their myths much, and so I don't know if this is her just like kind of adding in things like characterization that makes sense of the myths that they already know about them, like that they know that he was like the medicine sort of person that helped heal people later on, and that's why she's having him do this now.
I think
Or
he does give on the field kind of first aid at some point in the Iliad. But the interesting thing about his medical training is, for whatever reason, even though he was trained by Chiron and everything else, he was supposedly trained in medicine by Achilles. So Madeline Miller just made that make more sense.
that's fun. But either way, like I liked that last chapter with them with Chiron and having like a year go by. I will say that there was something towards the end that I wanted to make sure to point out because when I was talking about the stuff earlier where his dad was trying to force him to do stuff with like girls and things like that, and that it's not necessarily just that they're gay, but also just because you're trying to force a kid to do things that they're not really ready for.
Yeah.
Is that uh, Achilles doesn't miss his dad. Like
Hmm.
he doesn't miss being around his dad, and he doesn't miss being at home at all. And he says like at the end of this chapter that he like doesn't miss anything from home and doesn't want to really go back.
Hmm.
And I'm like, that's the biggest hint that somebody's parent sucks ass is if you don't want to go back. Because like, yeah, I remember when I was a kid, I don't remember what age I was anymore. I was probably like 11, and we did this. There was like this overnight church camp thing that my sister and I did for a couple years that we actually enjoyed. It was just on a lake, and it was just like 5 days of just like swimming and doing fun things like that. So we enjoyed it. And I remember that when we went to that I like really missed my mom
Hmm.
a lot and was like excited about seeing her again, but I don't ever remember feeling like that about my dad.
Yeah.
But I remember feeling like that about my mom even when I went to college and stuff, that I miss seeing her, and I would still talk to her like all the time and things like that. I would call her and every couple of days or whatever, and just the same kind of stuff I do now, and just tell her whatever is going on in my life. Um, and so I missed her a lot, but I didn't really miss anyone else. I didn't really miss my sister that much either. And so it's just a thing of like if you're like away from home and you're like, yeah, I'm fine not going back. um, I'm like, okay, that's a hint that he's like not exactly happy with how his dad has been treating him so far, because that's not normal for like a 13, 14-year old. It's usually really hard at that age to be away from your parents and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, so that was interesting that they made the point of him to say that he doesn't want to go back home and that he doesn't miss anything to do with home at all. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I got it. Okay, that's interesting. You're interesting. In the same way that like Patrocles isn't exactly like I miss my dad or like I miss home. He misses his mom.
Hmm.
But that's the only thing about like his home that he actually misses.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how that works.
Yeah. Like amazing how that works is when you treat somebody really bad, you don't want to actually be around them.
Yeah.
Like perish the thought.
So, um, that was it for Song of Achilles. We went through the show news, talked about the band, talked about a little bit about the inauguration. I'm sure there will be more bullshit that happens before our next live. I guess we'll plan to have them on TikTok as long as we can. Just because it's easier and because it doesn't suck up our phone batteries. Um,
We don't really know. It's one of those everything with TikTok is weird right now.
yeah.
Um like apps like this usually need to be updated in the app store and it can't be in it. And
Mhm.
so I generally don't know how much longer it's even going to work. Like
Yeah.
I feel like they would have to take it down again and then bring it back in order to get it to so that they can like force it to be updated and then bring it back to us again. Because
Mhm.
I that's like the only way they could really do it. Because a negotiation deal like this is going to take a long time. Like, I will say one of the things we didn't say before is that people were thinking that like Meta like bought them when it was gone, but like things like that can't happen that quickly.
And we would know.
Yeah, and there would be things about it. Like, I'm sure that Meta is one of the people that will want to buy the 50% that Trump wants them to sell to somebody in the United States.
Hmm.
We don't even know if that deal is necessarily going to even happen, but that's what he wants the deal to be. And it's not only going to be Meta though. There's other companies that have popped up saying that they would want to buy it. A lot of other people have said that they would want to buy it, obviously, because everybody likes this app. It would make them a ton of money. Um, but there's going to be a whole like process of all the different people that would like bid on it, and then them choosing which one, and like ByteDance could choose one person, and Trump would probably choose somebody else, and so that whole process will take time. And so I guess in the meantime, I guess I'm just trying to say is that I don't know how like stable the app is going to be, how often it's going to go away and then come back again. And
Mhm.
so it's hard to really say for sure how we're going to do these going forward because we just don't know what's going to
It
happen.
is true. Yeah. I would say, like, check here first. But if you find that us Americans have not been on here for a while again, Instagram, YouTube are the other two places you can find us primarily. I'm probably going to download Blue Sky. I feel like I'm hearing enough about it that like it might be worth it.
Yeah, I the thing I will say about Blue Sky is what I like about it and what I think a lot of people like about it is that there isn't necessarily like trending topics in the same way that there is on Twitter, where like the trending topics are the same for like everyone in an entire country or something like that. Because on Blue Sky, you can pick and choose what you want to see,
Yeah.
and to very specific to your interests. So like you could literally just watch or like look at photos of cats. Like
Oh.
there's a group called Cats, and I joined it, and I joined another group called like Artist, and there's another group about like Wisconsin. I joined like a Wisconsin sports one because that's where I live, and I try to follow like our local sports and stuff. And there's just and you can like the thing on there too that is really nice that is the selling point for when I was explaining it to people like my own mother is that on Blue Sky, it's very easy to block people, and a lot of people in a way that is not as nowhere near as easy on like any other app, especially on Twitter. So there's like big groups that people can join of if you have like an interest in something. And so on Blue Sky, there is a group of like MAGA people.
Mhm.
They join it themselves, and other people can put them in it. And it's basically it just they get joined into it if they have anything about Trump or have anything affiliated with MAGA in any way in on their profile. And so when you block that MAGA group, it blocks everyone that will ever be a member of that group.
Oh, good.
And so I found that thing and blocked it the first day that was on there. And every once in a while, I'll see like a post that somebody will make that is responding to somebody from that group, and I can't see what they're saying. And I don't even know who it is because it just automatically blocks anybody who joined that group from me ever having to see them. Like Jean, our mutual for both of us, she talks a lot about AI, and there's a lot of authors in the book world that are especially like indie authors that are using AI um, for their like cover, and they're trying to act like they paid like an actual artist to make it. And so
Oh, I
she,
saw that one.
yeah, she does that a lot. I've been trying to convince her to make a YouTube channel to talk about this stuff, especially with TikTok going away, because I really like how she talks about it and breaks down. Like, it aggravates me every time she does a video because it's so obvious to me how it's AI, because it's stuff that, like, if you've done art in any way at all, you would just know that it doesn't look like that. And, like, an artist wouldn't make something that's stupid looking. But it's, like, fun to have her do that. And she's not afraid to, like, confront people. And so the times that I see, like, posts on there of people that I can't see, it's
Mhm.
it's authors that she has like talked about that they're very obviously using AI, and then they get mad at her for using it, and they're blocked because they're also MAGA. And I think that is so funny. And I, whenever that happens, I like reply to her and tell her I can't see what they said because they must be on like the MAGA list too. And it just like makes sense that of course like an author that is has those affiliations would have no problem pretending to pay an artist when they're actually just using a computer program to make art is like it's a stupid thing that they're doing because it's like you wouldn't want somebody to use AI to write like a book you wrote, so why are you stealing art from somebody else? Um,
Yeah.
but they just don't think about it like that. But it is like a great site just for that in itself. That and even when you see like the news, there I don't know how to do this yet because I'm just not on it, and I don't follow enough people. Like I don't follow that many people in there. I just follow the people that I know from here that join there, and like some local like Milwaukee area people that I like to follow for like news and just like local stuff like that. I follow them on there, and so I don't see I do follow Aaron Parnas on there and for like the news to see like news things like that, but he doesn't post that much on there because
Okay.
obviously the most of the ways he posts those is on TikTok and Instagram for like video stuff. Um, but like I don't see an overwhelming amount of news, but there are like ways that you can even filter out. Like if you don't want to see news about a certain thing, you can say that you never want to see news about like reproductive rights or something, and then nothing about that will ever show up. And so you can like filter out the stuff that you just don't want to see. So you can. That's why it's such like an individualized sort of experience in a nice way because you can make you can choose what you want to use it for and it's very much what you just want to use it for that nobody else would ever use it for you can and everyone else can use it in a different way and so like the posts that I see on there are about like like books and like sports and like movies and stuff like that
Hmm.
but and cats
Yeah.
and like some artists and stuff. And those are the only things that I see on there. I know that there are people on there talking about lots of other stuff, but I generally never see what they say. Like earlier today, I was on there, and some of the like Wisconsin sports people were talking about something that the Chicago Bears did, and I had to like search for it on the site to find out what they were talking about because none of the I unfollowed all of like the national like news people that post about things like that.
Hmm.
And so I had no idea what they were even talking about because the only tweets or whatever you want to call those that I was seeing on Blue Sky was them reacting to the story, but I didn't know what story they were reacting to. So I had to go search to find out what they were talking about. And I was like, oh, okay, they hired somebody to be their new coach. Um, but I had to go like looking for it because none of those things were showing up for me because I don't follow any of those people, so I just never see it. And so that's the stuff with that site that is nice is that it's a lot easier to block people that will harass you. Like it's amazing that the first day on there I blocked the MAGA list and now I will never have to see them ever.
Yeah.
Just like thousands of people are just like gone forever and they just keep as more people get added to it, those people just are then blocked for me. And I don't have to like individually like you don't have to individually block everyone like that. You can just block it one time and then you're done. So that's why I like that site. It lets you post videos and stuff too. So I know people were gonna like try to use that if TikTok never came back. It obviously did, so that gave people more time to figure out where to do that stuff. But
Yeah.
like Blue Sky is a good replacement, sort of. It's a good one like that. Twitter is completely. I haven't even tried to go
I
on
haven't
Twitter.
deleted mine, but I haven't been on it either.
Yeah. Like I have an account, but the account that I made was one that I've only used for a couple years anyway. I only followed like 10 people on it anyway before any of this stuff ever happened. Every once in a while, I'll just like Google like a Twitter account that I know is still there
Hmm.
just to see if they've like posted anything. Like sometimes I'll Google like the updates account on
Yeah.
Twitter just to see if there's like something that I've missed. Like sometimes they post about news or their little spoiler source or whatever. And so every once in a while, I'll just like Google them and put them in Google and see if like their latest tweets or whatever. Or there was something funny that somebody said that I was trying to find like their. I saw somebody repost or something a tweet that somebody said that was funny. I can't remember what it was anymore. But every once in a while, I'll do something like that just to see like what they're saying.
Yeah.
But when you like click on the tweets, all the people underneath are all like sex bot accounts or like weird people, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is why everyone stopped using Twitter even before the election results happened because like you can't just like block all those people,
Hmm.
but you can on Blue Sky, and they also show you things in chronological order.
Oh wow. Yeah.
That already is like
God,
beating like
who would have
Zuckerberg.
thought?
Like the easiest stuff in the entire world. YouTube also shows you things in chronological order. Like it does. It shows you like the videos that you can set it where you can watch
Even the
videos.
subscriber page where you could just see the people you've subscribed to.
Yep, you can go to the subscriber page and watch things like the newest video down, and then you can go to like your like other page when you're like seeing what it wants you to watch or what it thinks you would like to watch. But also, if it's something comes up and you don't want to watch it, you can tell it that you don't want to watch it, and that's it, and it moves on with your life. Like sometimes I'll watch like videos about the videos where people are analyzing Gabby Hanna, and then like some actual Gabby Hanna video will show up, and I'm like, I don't want to know.
No, not interested.
Yeah. Or like you watch like a video essay about, or because I like watching like anti scam or like anti MLM content, or like I watch things from like people who used to be Mormon. Every once in a while, you'll get like a video from somebody who actually is one of those things.
Oh no.
And then I feel bad because I feel bad that like they're showing me this when I definitely will never watch it or like want to watch it or interact with it. And so I just try to say that I'm not interested so I don't end up watching like an actual Mormon
Yeah.
evangelize to me. or somebody who's actually in an MLM who's trying to convince me to buy their like $75 makeup
Oh, thank you.
and things like that. And I just like feel bad that the algorithm is showing that stuff to me when it's one of just those funny things that they're showing it to the people who never want to watch it. Like they put ads for those things, like the Mormon Church. Their ads show up on every ex-Mormon video. From
Okay.
I've seen it. I don't see them because I have like YouTube Premium, but in comments of every video that I watch, there'll be people saying like, "Oh, there was an ad for the Mormon Church in the middle of your video." Like, what the heck? And it's like, yeah, they pay a lot of money to get their ads everywhere, and I think it's funny that they end up paying the people who left their church that are trying to take it down.
Yeah.
Um, okay, that's fine. Just help them make money so that they can make a living making content and they don't have to get another job. But that is funny. It's like how on our videos, sometimes I'll see our ads and it's like the most randomest stuff, like stuff about like abuse somehow or like crypto.
Okay.
And I'm like, why are you showing me crypto? Or like rocket money for some reason. I'm like, do you know that we're poor?
It probably was.
Is that why you're showing us rocket money? Like, yeah, I know I have a lot of apps. Leave me alone. Like I can't. I like actually figured out all the ones that I have, so I stopped doing it. I got rid of a bunch of them because I was too poor to have like. If you really want to know like how poor I was last year, I got my tax returns back, and I made like $12,000 all of last year, which was $10,000 less than the year, or $20,000 less than the year before. They were like, when I started doing my taxes, they were like, "Are you okay?" They literally asked me like, "Are you missing a new job that you didn't mention? Are you sure that this is the only money that you made?" I was like, "Yes. Yes, I am sure that this is the only money that I made. Thank you for noticing that it's a lot less."
Sorry.
Like, I'm sorry, I was going through something.
Yeah.
But I got rid of Spotify and now I'm like, I don't need you anymore.
Mhm.
Like after, because this is one way thing if you ever want to get rid of Spotify for good, just turn off Spotify Premium and then you can't do anything.
Only playlists. I've been using only the free version, and yeah, it's not for everybody.
You can only, yeah, you can listen to playlists that you have. You can't even decide what songs you want to listen
6 times.
Yeah, and like you
6 times
can't,
in an hour.
yeah, like you can't pick what song you want to listen to next. You can't even go to somebody's like artist like page and just see like what is their most played song. Like the other day I wanted to just look and see how much like Kendrick Lamar songs have now because I saw a post that one of his songs got 1 billion listens since the summertime, and it won't even let me see that. It won't even let me see his most listened to songs. It shows that it shows like a picture of like a bunch of his songs, but it doesn't show them like in order or say how many like listens he has for any of them. And I'm like, I don't even get to see that because I won't give you $20 a month. Like the only thing I do in there is every once in a while I remember to check and see if any like podcasts came out on there that only are on there.
Mhm.
Um, but that'll get you to stop using that app really fast, especially if you just are me and pay for YouTube Premium, so you get YouTube Music, which is the exact same thing. They
Yeah.
have they have playlists and they have all of the songs that are on Spotify are on there. Like the day that Kendrick dropped his surprise CD, by the time I got out of work, it was on YouTube Music, and I just listened to it on there.
Yeah.
And that's just what you use it for now, and I don't have to pay anything extra. It's just I don't care that much about Spotify Wrapped to sign up for it just for that.
I heard
YouTube,
it's not real and that like people have been putting their data into a different algorithm anyway, so
yeah, and YouTube Music has their own version of that that's probably more accurate. And all it is when you're an autistic person, all of that is like showing the songs that you became absolutely fixated on for like months. That's all I do with music. I'll listen to like the same song for like 3 hours in a row
mhm.
for like months at a time and then stop listening to it and then listen to it again one time and then listen to it like that again for like many months in a row. And so it looks like all I listen to are like four songs. But like I like other songs, but that's just the way that I listen to music is just playing the same song on repeat over and over and over and over and over again. And I just switch between different songs. I have different songs for different moods.
Yeah.
Like switch between those songs depending on how I feel. And that's it. I don't want to listen to like new music necessarily like that unless I don't know, I just don't do that. And so Spotify Wrapped is always like, you listen to this song 470,000 times. And I'm like, thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Like, thanks for that.
Mine is so whacked because William shares my account and
Yeah.
so yeah, it's like
Just
you
like
listened
all
to
the songs.
Concerning Hobbits 200 times this year. Are you okay? It's like, yeah, William's reading Lord of the Rings and you have to listen to it. I don't know.
The thing I think is funny about that is that when I was reading Lord of the Rings when I was in like high school, I did the same thing, except back then it was like I got like the CD of the soundtrack, and
Mhm.
that was one of my favorite songs from the soundtrack. So I would listen to it when I was reading it, or when I was in college and stuff a lot.
Mhm.
Lord of the Rings was one of the soundtracks that I would listen to when I was trying to like study.
Mhm.
Um, I even did that when I was working as like trying to be like a paralegal. I would listen to soundtracks like that, and Lord of the Rings was one, and that song was my one of my favorite ones besides the Enya songs
Yeah.
um, on their soundtrack. And so I would just end up listening to Concerning Hobbits for like 4 hours, and then be like, "What are you doing?" And be like, "It makes me feel happy because this is when they were happy." This was like
Yeah.
before they left and went anywhere and got horribly traumatized. So I am enjoying listening to these songs.
It is the happiest song for that reason.
Mm-hmm. It's just that it's when Frodo's being cute with Gandalf, and
Yeah.
Gandalf is like being facetious and not telling him things, but it's in a fun way, not in like a you know way that it turns into later. I just think it's funny that William does the same thing, and I'm like, I guess this is just something that we do
Yep.
because I do that when I was reading the chapters for Song of Achilles. I was listening to Bittersweet Symphony from like 1997. That's one of those songs that I just keep going back to and listen to sometimes. And for some reason, I wanted to listen to it that day.
Mhm.
So I was listening to it on repeat the entire time I was reading these chapters. And for like 4 hours that day, like I was like walking around crying listening to that song, like about TikTok, because that's the only way I know how to. I was like, I'm being like my teenage self. Like, if you ever want to know, like how if that situation was traumatic, I was like reverting back to the things that I would do when my dad was around and he was terrorizing me, because that's what I would do when my dad was around and he was
Roller
terrorizing
coaster
me.
of it all. Like
I,
that's the first time I've been on such a crazy roller coaster like that. It
yeah,
was
and
bad.
that experience is exactly what it's like to have somebody that like out of control and chaotic and abusive in your life. Like that is exactly what it's like all the time, of like never knowing what they're going to do or what they're going to say or what they're going to do next. And the moment you think that you know something, then you find out 10 seconds later that you don't actually know something. Like, and it wasn't just like one person, it was like the whole experience of the Supreme Court not saying anything until the absolute last day when they could have told us beforehand, but they're just chicken little babies and didn't want us to get mad at them before the last second.
The
And
app taking it down hours early,
yeah,
and
and then
then
there was
like,
the whole
yeah.
thing of like Biden saying that he wasn't going to enforce his own law, and it was like you've passed this law, and
But
now
they
you're
didn't be
saying you're
so
not going to.
vague about it. They didn't know if the penalties would happen.
Yeah, and
Like,
it's like,
yeah, all of it, all of it.
like all like TikTok asked him to do on Friday was just put into. They said you're not being specific enough. Just add extra language about whether you will penalize us. And he was like, "You guys are just doing a power move," and I'm like, "I'm pretty sure you banning this app is the ultimate power move,
Yeah.
and not them wanting to make sure they're not penalized for $1 billion by your Department of Justice on the last day that you're president." That's honestly like a like one of the most rational choices, honestly, out of this entire thing was them being like, well, we have to take the app down because we don't want to get all these different companies banned, like having $1 billion ban between all three of us. That would be insane. Um, that's honestly a rational decision, and it left them having to do it like that, and us not really knowing what was going on because it's like it's a gigantic app. Like it holds 170 million people on it. It takes you can't just like it's not like a light switch where you can just like turn it off and have it be gone. So it's like I don't even think they would have even known like what time it would go down because that has to be such a complicated process to take something like that completely offline, where we can't use it at all. Like people were trying to use VPNs to get in for the like 15 hours that it wasn't working, and it wasn't working. They like literally tried every single country on the VPN, and none of them were working. Like there were people who live in other countries, but because they signed up to TikTok when they were in the United States, their account got banned.
Yeah.
Like there are people in like you said there's someone you saw that lived in the Philippines and
It was
her
Thailand, yeah, and she was saying like she changed the phone number to a local number to where she's at. She like changed the email address and thought that that would be enough, and hers still got shut down because
yeah.
she started the account in the U.S.
I saw someone on Threads that lives in Japan,
Mm-hmm.
and she signed up for it when she was on vacation in the United States.
Oh
And
my
because
god.
she just signed up for it when she was in the United States, her entire account got banned. Like Allurian Skull is like the best known person where they live in she lives in France now, and so she thought that her account would be fine. Like she got like a French phone with like a French SIM card and everything even. Um just so that she would still be able to use her account, and then she was like crying when it went away because she couldn't use her account either, and she didn't think she was going to lose it. She
Yeah.
thought that it would still be there, and so like the rest of us were still really upset knowing that it was going to go away. But like imagine if you thought that it would be there and then it's suddenly not there, and you didn't like do anything that you normally do to like plan for something like that. And
Well,
so
yeah. And because we didn't know, there's American people who like deleted their app, and because it's taken off of the store now, even if they were a big creator, there's no way for them to access their accounts.
no, and like you can't post new videos on TikTok on like desktop.
Hmm.
You can do everything but post videos, and so they can't even like post a video from there. And I don't even know if they'll ever be able to use it again because unless they make a deal with them at some point, it probably won't be in the App Store again.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's the only way that it would ever like. I just deleted Lemon 8, and then afterwards I realized like, oh, I guess I can never use that app ever again. Because I like realized like, oh right, well whatever, I don't care about that app. I didn't really care that much about it anyway. I just kind of did it because no one was really sure if absolutely everything was going to be banned or not, and so I didn't care if the things that I posted on there went away, and so I just was like, whatever, I'll just post something every once in a while on here and see what happens. So I just deleted it because I didn't care, but I realized like I'm probably never going to be able to use that app again. But it is hard for people who just wanted to not have to look at it when it was gone. And then now being like, well, now everyone else is back on it and I can't I can't get on it. I want to get back on it, and I can, but I deleted it because it made me sad to like keep wanting to click on it and then being reminded again that I can't use it.
Yeah.
That was like it was a really hard thing when it was gone, and one day it will probably be gone again. That to know that all of those things are like out there, um, and that people can see your videos, but you can't see them, or that they can't talk to you, or you just can't like. It's just a weird feeling to know that apparently people from European like English ruled countries were all on here talking mad shit about us as soon as we were gone. Like they're not really helping the whole idea that they're obsessed with us if the only thing they can talk about when we leave is us. Like don't you have things going on? And if you guys are really making all these videos being very xenophobic and judging everyone who lives in this country just because they live here and thinking that you're better than us just because you don't live here, to the point that you don't have any empathy for us when our government is like censoring us in this level, that you're glad that we're gone just because you think that us being American makes us a less person than you, when you're dancing about the fact that our government banned us from an app. Like I think that makes you kind of shitty that you're doing that. But it doesn't help the idea that you guys are weirdly obsessed with us, because if you guys really want to have like your own identity and not have to talk about the United States anymore, then don't talk about us. Don't talk about us. Talk about what's going on with your government and your country and your people. You see us because you think that we're interesting, because we are. We're very funny. Like, who else would think to join Red Note? You definitely wouldn't. Like, I mean, like people from those countries, you would never think to be like, you know what? You think that China's trying to like steal our data? I'm going to give China my data for free. I'm going to make friends with them. I'm going to start being a little pen pal with some of them. I'm going to help some of these Chinese children with their English homework. And we're going to like actually like completely dismantle propaganda from both of our governments by talking to each other every day and just like sharing things in a very like nice way. That's absolutely something that we would do. I don't know if they would think to do that. That's just our sense of humor. But it's just funny that when we were gone, the like trending topic was people making videos about how the Americans were gone. And then as soon as we all came back, all of those videos were on our For You page. And it's like, hey, bitch. Like, what? Like, now we're all having to watch all of these videos that you're making about us, saying that how glad you were that
Oh my gosh.
that happened to us. Like, what a weird way to come back to the app to see a bunch of people celebrating that we were gone.
Well, it's just as bizarre as all the influencers who blew up their like secrets too.
That was unbelievable, especially because I was like, you do this as a job.
The person who said she only does half of her workouts, that was probably one of the worst ones.
And I guess there was somebody, I saw videos of people talking about these people, but I don't know who these people are. Like, I don't like watching like the aesthetic-y sort of whatever.
Yeah, I watched a Marky video, but yeah, it was the Ice Girl probably, right?
Yeah, like I've seen, the only time I've seen videos of that girl is when there's this like British Indian guy that will do videos making fun of those people and being like, look how rich I am. Look how rich I am. I have 15 different kinds of ice, and it probably cost me $80 to buy the things to make this stupid ice cube. And that's the only time I ever see those videos, which is exactly what I think when I see those videos of like, I don't have money to eat.
Yeah, and to find out she wasn't using the ice.
Yeah,
Well, so she backtracked and she was like, "Well, I don't use the ice, but when I have guests over and like everybody else who enjoys beverages at my house is like, no, girlie, you said what you said."
Yeah. It's like a thing of like, even if you are doing that, you should maybe saying something to like ruin basically the facade of what your content is, where you make people so aware of something that it just makes it not interesting anymore. That's definitely a crazy thing to do when every other social media app exists and you could still like continue on. And also the fact that it was very unsure if TikTok would ever come back.
Yeah.
It's a wild thing to like get so caught up in that trend that you just admit to stuff like that. Like that Soph person who made videos about Luke and stuff that I mentioned earlier, she was posting videos about how I guess there were people who have like Percy Jackson like accounts like for years. She was saying that there's people that have had TikTok accounts on here talking about the books for like 4 years, and that multiple people like that admitted on that trend that they never read the Heroes of Olympus books
Oh my
and
God.
had been pretending for all of these years that they had read them. They would say which book they like most and least, and that and I guess some of those people would make fun of like the newer fans for not having read all of the books yet, and then they admit that they never read like half of like Heroes of Olympus and the original series are books that basically anyone who's a big fan of the series has definitely read. Most people have read those because they are very much like a story connected together.
Mhm.
Even if you haven't read like the other Trials of Apollo books or whatever, you've at least read those 10.
Mhm.
And so it was absolutely, even that was like an absolutely insane thing to do, to have an account like that for 4 years. And then after all those years, admit that you never read half of the books you've been pretending that you read. Like it's one thing if you haven't read it, that's fine. You're allowed to like not read all of them or read them again now. Like I see videos from people who are reading Heroes of Olympus for the first time all the time on
Mhm.
my For You page, and it's fun to see them like analyzing it and thinking about all this stuff and stuff again. And but like that's insane to admit that you didn't read it and you just been pretending all of these years that you did. And it's just and they just like deleted the videos they posted, I guess, and were just like trying to pretend like it never happened because I couldn't figure out who she was talking about because I couldn't find any of their videos. But I was just like, that's wild that people were just doing stuff like that. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? And I was like, I guess I could do something crazy like that, but I'm like the opposite where I don't like really keep secrets like
Yeah,
that.
I don't have any secrets, so I had nothing to reveal.
Yeah, like my whole I was like thinking about this earlier today, like how people try to figure out how to be like an advocate or whatever. And my version of that, and like at least a good amount of my mutuals too, is our version of that is that our childhoods were so horrific that us just like being on the internet and just like saying out loud some of the things that happened to us is like advocacy, because it's like literally showing just by talking about it as an adult that you survived whatever you're talking about. And so literally all I have to do is, oh, my dad used to do this to me, and then people see that and they're like, what the fuck? And it's like, but you sound like a somewhat like well-adjusted person that's like, you know, older. How did you survive all of this crazy stuff? And I'm like, I don't know, I just did. So if you are going through that too, you can as well, because I'm here. So that's how this works. So that's really all I know. That's all I have to do is just like go on the internet and record myself just like giving people facts about my childhood. That's it. I'm done. I'm good. I don't have to do anything else to like convince you that I know what I'm talking about or that you should listen to me. That's literally all I have to say. And but it does make it very easy because I never have to do anything else to like convince people that I know what I'm talking about. And I'm like, well, this is my life.
Yeah.
So what do you think? That's literally it. Like
I
even with
have to
the
keep going. I thought Jake would have put William to bed by now, but I hear William's still up. I gotta go parent.
you
Yeah.
got to put your artistic kid to bed. He has to
Yes,
have his routine.
he does. Yeah. I'm surprised he hasn't jumped in the shower himself yet. All right. I will talk to you later. We will ramble some more next week, and we'll be on TikTok unless for some reason they take away our live feature again.
Yeah.
That we just got it back today, so we'll see if this lasts.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Either way, if we're not here next week, we'll be on YouTube next week.
Yep. All right. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.